Hi everyone, and welcome back to the interviews for physio students and newly qualifieds. Today's guest is Andrew McCauley, so make sure you've got that comfy seat, notebook and pen, and enjoy the interview. Okay, hi everybody. So welcome to the next in the line of interviews. As you've seen, we've got loads coming up. And today we're joined by Andrew McCauley. He is an NHS physio and also runs a private practice as well. And we're going to dive straight into covering all the questions that you've so really kindly sent in. And we're going to just dive straight in, I think. So welcome, Andrew, to today's interview.
Good man, James. Yeah, thanks for having me here. I just wanted to kind of first of all start with congratulating you on doing this for a start. As you know, I've known you for a while now, so you're like a physio student on steroids. It's the only way I can describe you, because it's just like phenomenal amount of effort you're putting in while doing the degree. I was barely floating during my degree, so to set this all up, I wish I had it. Just to be able to listen to people and get nuggets as well. So I think alongside moving house, COVID, a few other things, getting married. What age are you, by the way? I forgot to ask you before. Are you and your...
I'm gonna have to stop the recording if I tell you my age.
Go on. Nah, you gotta go with the age. It's gonna be relevant.
36.
All right, yeah, right. So so it's kind of the same thing that happened to me in my 30s. It's just it all kind of seemed to go a bit crackers, and you, fair play to you anyway. I think you're doing a great job.
I think I'm going to coin that one: physio student on steroids. I quite like that.
Yeah,
it's good.
You can have it.
Well, as you kind of alluded to there, Andrew. So we've known each other sort of through. I think originally it was the conference that you run twice a year down in Cornwall, which I attended. I don't know when. Couple of years ago, year ago, whenever it was, which is really good. So sports medicine conference, and we attended that we went through some strength and conditioning stuff and all sorts. But so I've known you through that, and then on and off we've had a chat about kind of education and things, haven't we? So we've known each other for a couple of years maybe. And as you say, I'm a bit of a nosy Parker, so I like to get to know people, especially in the southwest, and of which you are. You're on the wrong side of the border, though, to me, but over in Cornwall.
Whoa. Is this because I asked you your age?
Yeah, got to get my own back. So, I'm sure we're going to cover loads about what you do, Andrew. But just to kind of cover it off, really, in the NHS, you're currently working as an extended scope practitioner for hips, knees, shoulders. So I don't know if you want to just give us very briefly, what does that involve?
So I split my week half and half. So I do Monday to Wednesday as an ESP in those three areas, and that's usually the morning in a clinic, which can be any of those joints. Usually in what they call the MSK interface service, which there's similar services across the country. And they will be assessment clinics of about 40 minutes, which will include anything in a normal ESP clinic, GP referrals, consultants, etc., physio referrals. And then in the afternoon, I'm in a normal physiotherapy outpatient department, rehabbing. Sometimes that involves a lot of maybe more of the complex or later stage rehab sports stuff, or people who have maybe been through physio before. I've seen them in an ESP clinic and think, actually the rehab needed to change a little bit, so I'll take them on, maybe the little bit ones that haven't responded, but don't need anything else, like don't need surgery or any imaging. So that's Monday to Wednesday. So that's my clinic. Then I do my private practice on Thursday, Friday, Saturday mornings here in Truro. And if we can dig into that maybe in a different light, but that's my week really.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that's quite good for physio students, because a lot of us kind of go straight into that rotational position in the NHS, but I think quite a few nowadays are thinking private practice as a real option, and it's quite nice to hear that you've split your time to keep your hand in the NHS, which has an awful lot of positives and a lot of benefits, as well as doing a bit of private practice as well, which again allows you maybe to have a bit more freedom to do things the way you'd like to do in the kind of the best ideal situation.
Well, I suppose that kind of brings me into maybe the type of private practice I run, which is slightly different to what I would think it's slightly different, because when I was thinking about doing it, I think someone might have asked the question about private practice, but I wanted a model that wasn't reliant on insurance. So I didn't want to. I heard too many people talk about private practice and rely on insurance as the main income, because it's a valid way of getting regular clients. But I don't take on any of the big insurance companies that dictate my price or time, which dictates the price. So I don't go with Bupa or the bigger ones, because they want to pay me a certain amount for a certain time, and they won't let me double up the appointments. So my whole when I was developing my private practice, I said I wanted 90-minute appointments for patients, new patients, regardless, even if they were post-surgery, etc. Because of my belief and my understanding of the research with regards to building a trustworthy relationship, or an honest, trustworthy relationship, being pretty much my number one thing, and it's my number one tip for any physio. And I know it's a big thing, but it covers in communication. So that was essential, that I'd have 90 minutes and that 60-minute follow-ups. And then sometimes those 90-minute appointments wouldn't necessarily end in any particular, it would obviously end in impression diagnosis, probably advice, and maybe about 30%, 40% exercises, not always. It depends on what I find out in that assessment. But then when I do exercise, I want that time there. I want that time for coaching. I want that time for really like spending the time with the rehab, just like I spend time with the subjective. And I've been a big promoter of that for a long time. I think, and it moves into students, because students just, that situation when you come on placement it's just a nightmare for them. Yeah. They're trying to remember stuff. They're trying to listen, but they can't listen. They're blinded by, they got a shoulder. They're thinking about the shoulder test. They can't remember. They don't know, well, that's what I thought anyway. And I was just drowning in anxiety and not listening to anything. And I wasn't getting any reassurance from my educator that actually don't worry about that stuff yet, So I see, even since a student, I've always thought more time would lead to the model that I would get better results, because they would trust me at the end of that 90 minutes. You build a relationship. You're trying to build that kind of, not a friendship, but you're trying to understand the person. And when they feel listened to, trust is going to go up. And when trust goes up, then what you tell them goes up. So fear comes down. Mm-hmm. And fear is a big part of pain. So you kind of attack that. Whatever exercise you might give them, and they may be somebody who doesn't like exercise. So now you've got to convince somebody who doesn't like exercise or do exercise to do exercise. The literature will tell you that won't work. They don't, they won't take more than 1 or 2 exercises maximum. So then now they've got to believe me, trust me, and then I can prescribe. So prescription of exercise comes even right from the very beginning, and that trust again. Yeah. So if they then do it, comply to the exercise because of that, it's going to take them a lot less time, hopefully, or the fact that they become more self-reliant and the appointments are fewer. So I see people a lot less. I see them over a long period of time, but actually probably only 3 or 4 times, maybe even less sometimes.
Okay.
Which is a tricky model if you're trying to do that full time. Sorry, that was coming back to my rant there. But if I was to jump into the market with no insurance backup off the back of that type, because my price inevitably is more expensive when you start, you see. So you're trawling around, and sometimes price matters to people. Generally, it's not when they find a product they like. Mm-hmm. And that's where you have to be brave in private practice. You need to find a niche and you need to hit that. Mm-hmm. You can't be vanilla. Yeah. So, and that takes years to develop. So I was lucky enough to be able to do the NHS to keep my mortgage paid while I could develop some sort of caseload. Now, that's maybe not an option for some people starting off, and that's why they get dragged into insurance. And then it's kind of hard to get out of that. It's hard to stop that. And I think just the way we're going from a point of view of self-efficacy and good evidence-based practice is rushing our appointments to get through somebody in 40 minutes. I couldn't go to that now in private practice. I just think I'd have to see them 2 or 3 times. And then I just think you've lost that relationship building,
definitely. I think, yeah, I mean, we've already covered loads there. So, but I mean, one of the things I just wanted
Sorry
to hit
about
on there is it's really good to hear, because on my placements, when I've done MSK placements, I've always struggled to keep my subjective history down. So keeping it shorter.
Yeah.
But while my educators were telling me you need to kind of get this down, they were also saying to me, but we are so envious of you, because actually by doing what you're doing, you're probably going to be making people better than we can, because you're spending all that time. And it wasn't any skill necessarily. It was just the fact that I had time to sit and listen and build a rapport and trust and relationship with someone, that meant that when they came in, everything was a bit quicker. But as you say, when you speed that initial bit up down to 40 minutes, it's very difficult to get all of those things in, which we're probably going to talk about, I think, later on anyway, in that sort of side of things.
Yeah.
For definite. So I think
but like, just maybe even to pick up on that point.
Yeah.
Sorry, just to pick up on that point there about, I suppose, if you want to go down that path of the clinical educator now, but you know, it's that kind of like, that's a good thing that they're saying, but it's kind of delivered in a, you know, I know it's not word for word, but it's delivered in a weird kind of, it's a positive thing, but it's also in that weird envious thing. And it's, by the way, around the corner, this won't be happening. So, you know, good luck with you then. So, so it's not nice, because it's like, oh yeah, you're so lucky.
Yeah.
Which they're kind of going, look, it's a good thing, you might be making people better, but it's not mental. It's a bit like, well, why aren't, no, we're lucky enough where I work in the NHS, and I say this when I go out and teach around the country and say to people, how long do you have? And we have an hour for new patients. And I just think it's great. And some people are, we have 30 minutes and 40 minutes, and we can't do it in quick enough time. And I'm like going, people aren't going to tell you about mental health problems, which we know, again, the literature and all the top guys are saying it's really important to know. And that doesn't necessarily mean a mental health or a mental disease, but actually mental health, stress, anxiety, that stuff, that sort of stuff. Yeah. They won't mention their medication, you know, and all that kind of stuff. They're not going to start telling you about eating disorders and lots of really important stuff towards your treatment and their recovery straight away. They don't know you. And in the NHS, you're standing behind, I always say this, pull a curtain across, which, you know, everyone can hear. And if you're where I work in St. Austell, everybody knows each other. They're not going to tell you stuff. So our environment is poor. We haven't got enough time. So we're like, all right, can we just get on with this? And also, we need to get this really important information. Oh, by the way, you know, let's talk some red flag questions that we're talking about erectile dysfunction and do you weed yourself?
Yeah.
You know, who's going to tell you those stuff? A stranger who just walked in with a curtain behind you, and you're dressed in like a white polo. You know, I think we look like pool cleaners sometimes. You know, it's kind of like, who's going to trust that? You know, it's hard. It's hard to do, and that's why I think that the time is a big one. And I don't think it should just be, oh yeah, well, that's what we have to put up. I think we should fight for that. And I think, you know, that's part of some of the stuff I say to anyone in the department. Like, why can't we? I think the quality would be better, and here's some research to show that. Anyway, we'll come back to that maybe in an educator question or something like that.
Yeah, oh yeah, we definitely will, because I think it's a prominent question that's come up, and it's something we know I definitely want to pick your brains on even more than we already have. So, going to go right back to where we probably should have started in the first place, was your experience of your university sort of physio. So you did a previous degree, like an awful lot of physios do, and then your time at university, you went to the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. Is that right? To do your physio. So tell us about your experience. Was it a good one? Was it a bad one? How did it go?
Right. So I suppose I started, I didn't like school. School in Ireland was like, you do 7 subjects for your equivalent of A levels. So you do, and 7 of those, so that's 2 years. It's very school based. There's no high school, and it's different to here. And you have to do, to get into an Irish university, you have to do a language. Well, you did anyway when I was doing it. And you had to do Irish, English, and maths to pass it. So there's 3 subjects out of 7: Irish, English, two languages. I know English is not necessarily a foreign language, but it's that linguistics, isn't it? Yeah. And maths, obviously. And then you had 4 choices of 4 others in not an awful lot of picks. Like, you guys can pick PE, psychology, and all sorts of nice, cool things. And we have, you know, business, biology, chemistry, physics, languages. You know, that's about it. Accountancy and some technical drawing stuff. So it really limited me. So I ended up doing French, English, and Irish, and I hate languages. So it's like I'm I'm trying to do, if I'm trying to get into uni, it's like there's too many really, things I'm not very good at.
Yeah.
And so, and I liked football too much. So I didn't really like school. I didn't like the whole hierarchy and very structured. When I went to uni first, the first degree actually was really good, and I enjoyed that, and I felt way more comfortable. I actually liked the learning then, and it was on a subject I liked. Then when I went to Physio, just to get to that, the course was great, and their support was amazing at that college. It's a really good uni, and but I absolutely the learning stuff was fine, placement stuff. As I've said this on the phone, I hated it. Hated being a physio student. It was, and this is, I did 3 years of a degree and then another degree. So, and I put some money into the second degree because we got the first one free in Ireland. Back then you could get a scholarship. And I was like, so I'm pumping money in here. I better like this. Yeah. And I turned up to a placement and they dressed us. It's shocking. In none of those like dentists, Dr. Death, kind of daft, pinned across, like, talk about pin dope on my forehead or spot the loser, as you walk in, I'm your physio. And they're going, yeah, sure you are. You're the diet physio. We'll talk to the real one in a second, So it made me, I was 22 starting the degree. I was like, oh, no, what do I look like? And it was all about, oh, you look professional. I was like, you look like a professional dick. Yes, perhaps. But I just felt terrible. And then there was a lot of hierarchy. You could spot that. There still is in physio. Loads of hierarchy. I felt patronized at times. And in certain departments, we weren't even allowed to sit with the physios. We were told, like, we have our own time now. You can go down to canteen, which was just like demoralizing. So I didn't feel like, and then the placements, it just felt like when it come to like points that your students might relate to is the communication side. When someone's looking over my shoulder, and it's a bit like doing these things, you can't be natural. It's very difficult to kind of nearly let that flow. I was always like, I need to ask these questions. I need to ask this. And when my educator wasn't there, I did way better. Yes. I was always like way more relaxed, and I got more information, and I was me. I was normal, and I always thought, this is just doing my head in. I remember on the last placement, I just kind of went, I said, I'm so glad this is over to the tutor. I just went, I hated being this. This was just not comfortable at all. And that wasn't that they were bad, but I just thought there's a gap here. You're carrying on this kind of, it's a bit like with doctors as well. You have to earn your stripes. You have to get you have to get the beast in, you have to be made. And I just don't believe I don't think you learn very well in those environments. So I didn't like that. And when I teach students now, I always bring, well, I try to. Sometimes people feel that, I don't know whether I'm a bit intimidating, but I do try and just be normal around them and actually try and de-stress them as soon as they come in, relaxing, just, and anything they come back with. The only time you can get frustrated is when someone keeps making the same mistake, or keeps doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But like, if somebody's there, it's you can see them, they're exhausted. I was exhausted by the end of the day, it's really hard. So I didn't like it. But as soon as I became a band 5, that went. So I really like as soon as I became a physio, which was great, I was like, you had that time, you didn't have marking, which is just, that's another thing I think students get I think just on that point, marking is always, I've interviewed loads of people, right? We don't look at degree mark. I don't go, oh, 2-2 or a 2-1 or, oh, they got a first. That's brilliant. I'm like going, that means nothing.
No.
You know what I mean? It really doesn't mean anything. It's great and it gives you a bit of an idea, but I've never gone, oh, they got a first. I've never got an interview and gone, oh, well, they were really good. Oh, I think I'll go on their degree mark. No chance. No. I don't know anyone who does. And if they do, well, fair enough, but I definitely don't. So marks on placements are, Corey, I wanted a high mark and it felt good when I got one. But really, I wanted to be told that it didn't really matter, because that would have made a little bit like, you're not going to fail unless you do something daft, all right? So let's just calm down here. You're here to you're here to learn and really be able to absorb that. And the only way you can do that is be somewhat relaxed.
Yeah.
Now, if you tell somebody that from the start, they can at least go, all right, well, this person's not a dick, and they want to help me here. I felt it was from and I think it comes from educators, maybe new ones as well, or ones who aren't confident themselves. They bring an element of stress to it. Yeah. And I think that's when I tell educators, so I'm watching you with the student, you're stressing, and then they're picking that up, and it's not nice for them. it's not nice for you either. So you need to sort that out. You need to have a word with yourself, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
That's
Definitely.
a rant. Sorry about that, James.
No. It's not. It's a bit like you said about, being relaxed, and this is what I want these interviews to be like, is to give you a chance to kind of almost free flow, because actually out of that has come some things that obviously I can only speak for myself, but I'm sure other students have had, is that being watched, which absolutely we have to be watched, we have to be seen to be safe, and they have to see us to be able to kind of say at the end of it, yeah, you're competent in doing X, Y, and Z. But as a student, you put that overwhelming and onerous feeling of kind of needing to perform, and it just throws you totally off what you're doing. And some people are very good at coping with that. But when you said earlier about as soon as your place, the educators weren't there, you just relaxed and you loved it. It was great. And I was exactly the same. I found it so much easier. And I think that's just human nature. But how educators are around
Or
students.
if they did the old sneaky, you don't have to be, or not sneaky, but just like, oh, I'm just going to listen in and around.
Yeah.
Even if they're in the vicinity, or, you can come out and ask, like, especially maybe later on in the placement,
Yeah.
I do like to say, look, I'm going to give you that autonomy. I can see you're doing well when I'm around. That's cool. I get that. I was come from that school. So, but when they come back from a subjective, I'm going to be asking all the questions I'm going to ask a person. I'm going to have the notes there. So I'm going to be like, did you ask? So I'll be able to check. So you're still able to, as an educator, you can still check, are they doing it? It's like, did you ask about red flags? No. Okay, you better ask about that. That's an issue. So let's do that. Or did you ask about these things? No, I didn't. Okay, well, that's probably why you may be stuck here. You can still teach without having to hear their communication. Yes, you need to do both. But I think as the educator, you need to learn about the learning styles. I think that I'm a big fan of learning style, because it took me a while to even understand my one. And I'm a great audio. I can hear like audible books and podcasts to change my, like, if I was a student now, it would be amazing. But reading, I'm not dyslexic or anything, but I just get tired. I have to read things twice. It takes me a really long time to read. Books, I'll go through, I Audible now, I just fire through them, weekly books, because I can hear that way. And I just was like, I didn't know that, really. Everyone just kept going, you just need to practice reading. I went, it's driving me mental. I'm not getting any better at it. I'm not getting quick at it. Is there something wrong with me? So your own learning style, and then trying to identify a student's learning style is absolutely essential. Yeah. And if you don't do that, and it's the same with your patient. Because if you don't know what your patient's learning style is, if you give them a sheet of exercises or you do a load of verbal, and they have no way of retaining that, and you haven't figured out what type of a learning style they have, then you're screwed again. So, that comes out. So it's patient, it's student, and it's educators, understanding of this. This is really important. And I think, there's many ways to educate people. And I think that's what my advice, that the educators need to kind of, they're being thrusted into a teacher role, and teaching is a really tough skill, and it takes experience. So just the first thing with the teaching or educators, I think it might have been a question, was leave your ego at the door 100%, because it's going to get affected. And if you get a cocky student, which are grand, and it's great when you get somebody who knows their stuff, you're going to feel that ego is going to bite you, and you're going to get a little bit shitty with people. Yeah. And then you're going to be that educator. Yeah. Because we all can remember a teacher that was we all didn't like, in school. You always go, oh yeah, remember that one. Like it was like they're in the room. You don't want to be that educator, because physio is a small place, and then you're in you know what I mean? You've just got to have a little think about it, as well as the shoot. Because students will then be like, they'll bounce off that. They'll feel more comfortable if you're honest and going, yeah, I didn't know that, fair play to you. Yeah. I've got a job, you don't. Do you know what I mean? So it's always there's no problem. They're a student. Yeah, you're just like, well, I've got a job, getting paid for this, pal. So you don't have to feel under attack. I think people get a bit like, oh, well, they know more than me. Oh, I should know that. Oh God, right. And it's the age-old tutor get out of jail card, which is, well, if you don't know, you should go look it up and then do a presentation. Tell me, because I don't know really. Undercover, I don't know. So you go away and do it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think having that confidence to say to a student, that's actually, good on you. I didn't know that, actually. That's new to me. That then creates a clinical conversation as well, which then the student benefits from massively. But also, I think from educators' point of view, it's just having the confidence, the fact that as students, we are currently learning in detail all of these things, and it's fresh in our minds. So we're bound to have certain things that we do have right here all the time that educators maybe haven't used for quite a long time, and so it's not right there.
Yeah, so I always liked having students from the word go, because we got them quite early. And when I went to London straight away, did a big teaching hospital, Royal London Hospital, and you were thrusted into that quite early. You were made to do presentations. Mm-hmm. You were made to go all those uncomfortable things quite early on. Well, like within rotations and stuff, and you were made to kind of teach people and learn, and that it's uncomfortable, but it develops that kind of acceptance of critical feedback, or being kind of like, actually, yeah, I don't know, and that's all right. That's grand to not know that. And as you said, like, so I've had a couple of students come in, and I'm like, going, I said, that was class. It's one of the, that's great. I said, I'd give that to, if Band 5 showed me that, I'd be happy with that. You know what I mean? Because they want that. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, if you're doing that, I'm stealing that paper. Like, I'm stealing that paper. There's no way we know it all. We're trying to do the whole body in a lot of the cases in MSK. It's, if people praise it, you know what I mean? I think that's the perfect opportunity for a student who's crying out for, look, I've done some hard work, I'm exhausted. And the thing is that physio's already, he's been through it, or she's been through it. Yeah. So they should have empathy for the student. It's just like, I'm like, look at him going, oh, I hated it. I'm just straight away, I'm absolutely dripping in empathy, because I'm just like going, I'm just so glad it's not me now. I just watched them going in for the marks, and I just remember going, oh, that was so bad. So anyway.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I'm just kind of going through, obviously we've had loads of these questions in, and we're going to make sure we hit them. And your path to private practice, you've touched on it quite a lot already, in terms of how you got into private practice as well.
Yeah.
And obviously it took you some time to kind of gradually get into that. What made you kind of do it in the first place? And then what was the path?
So I always loved, I'm sport and fitness mad. I've always been that since I was a kid, and, played football to a decent level, and just always involved in fitness and weightlifting or anything since I was a kid. So sport was always my initial, did sports science first and coaching. Then I got injured a lot when I was in teens from football, got some pretty terrible physio, which is kind of ironic, because then I wanted to be one. But it never worked. I struggled. And Oscar Slatter's disease treated with interferential and that kind of stuff, electrotherapy. It's what was happening back in the 90s. So, but still, so I got that kind of, sports was the big thing. So I thought sports, and I was going to get involved in professional sport and be involved in that. That was what I thought I was going to get into. So I did my degree. I had 6 years of studying. You just like, I just want to relax, just want to get into this, settle in, find out where the toilets are, learn the secretaries' names, be comfortable in an environment for a few months. I've just been getting hammered for 6 years, in my opinion, or 3 years if you just done the degree. And I just relaxed into it. And so I never really at the start, I had, goals are a funny thing. I never was like, some people are like, I want this. And I've always kind of gone, right, I'll set reasonably long term, or just like, I'll get to there and I'll do that kind of stuff. I'm interested in that, and I'll just see where that takes me, rather than being this, I'm going to be Manchester United professional physio. That's what I thought I wanted to be. So then I got in. So then I did my rotations. I just learning about physio, and just going and I'm talking to physios then again who were involved in sport and who weren't. And then I did a few things around like going into teams and seeing what it would be like. And I just was like, wait a minute. I'm rubbing people down and taping people here. That's all I'm doing. And that's what was a big part of it. Yeah. And then I was looking into academies and stuff, and it was not too far off, and chatting to people. And I was like, going, wait a minute, I'm not really, this professional sport business. Then it was like, oh, your quite hands are tied behind your back. The coaches have a lot of power. And I just, and like this whole kind of commitment to weekends and stuff like that. And there's something I'll come back to later on about where your life, I've got health and fitness, I've got work, and I've got family and social. And I was thinking that's going to take an awful lot away from family and social. I just thought, it's not for me. So I kind of just tipped away, and I did an MSEP course. So I did that for a year. I didn't do the exams or anything. I just did the MSEP. So I did a lot of manual stuff, manual therapy, and learned about that, which there was some great stuff in there. I really learned from that. then I just was kind of like, did that. And then I went into, I just did some kind of traditional 2-day courses. And I wasn't going, sports not for me. I'm not, I don't want to be involved with a team. And then moved to Cornwall. And then I was 30. So it was like something happened in 30. I bought a house, I got married, and I started a master's. It's like someone just ripped the dynamite in me. I'm competing with your year this year. It was mental. You know, it was just the 3 most stressful things you can do in a year. I just jumped them all into it, you know.
Yeah.
And then that was, and the masters came from just going, I'm still not sure. I don't think I'm good enough yet to get into an ESP role. And that was kind of where in Cornwall I was thinking about going. And once I did that, I started to kind of think, right, I'm starting to understand the literature now a lot better, and I'm starting to understand as a therapist. And that took me maybe 5 years to kind of see where I was as a therapist in a way. Like some people are quicker, like you, and I can sense that you're probably a lot quicker. Like I'd say there's some physio students, James, to be honest, thinking you are a bastard because you're just relentless, man. And that's a compliment. That's an Irish compliment. Okay. You know, you're just, I know people get that wrong when I came over here. No, you are, you know, and it's a really, really, you know, you're like, but I'd say people are like going, God, where's that guy getting his energy from? But I'm like going, yeah, but you don't know James's background. You don't know how many, he's 36, he's gone through things, he's learned stuff, he's on it. This is what he spent 3 years in his 30s, which is different to doing it when you're 18, 19, 20. It just is. You've put aside money, and you know, you can imagine, I'm only just, you know, I don't know your situation, but I'm just trying to say all that stuff makes it different. And this is why you have a YouTube channel, and this is why you can do these things, because you have that space in your head. But it took me that long to really know where I was going. And it is a tricky situation where you are. But during that, I just started feeling like, I think I got something to offer here. And I just started learning about time. And then I had some support from a really good friend of mine. She's a physio, and she pushed me into it. So she was in private practice. She said, you'll definitely love it. You'll definitely love it. Which really helped. Kyla, a friend of mine, and she really helped me do that. And then I suppose, wanted to find a niche, because when you start to try and set up a private practice, there's a couple of things here. Is you have to learn about business and you have to learn about marketing, which sounds really, really kind of like obvious, but it's not done well by physios, really badly a lot of the time. So the websites all look the same. They all see everything and anything, and it's all the same thing. They list out, and it's vanilla. It's really kind of like, I went through them, I trawled through all the websites. It was like, everything just looks the same. There's nothing that stands you out. Why am I going to go and see you over the other one? A bar price. So I set out a model that I wanted to be involved with sport or people who had goals, return to fitness and health. So that meant that they always came in with the goal of, I want to lose weight, or I want to be fitter, or I want to be a pro CrossFitter. Yeah. And that's where I kind of started getting excited by it. And when I was reading the marketing, I thought, I've got all the skills to do this. So, but by reading the marketing, you start to learn that actually marketing is just communication, obviously.
Yeah.
But then I was like, wait a minute, I can use marketers are the best people to manipulate people to do what they want you to do. So they sell you shit you don't need. Yep. You know what I mean? And they sell you multiple shit you don't need. You're a runner. You've probably got 50 pairs of trainers and more Lycra than you can. How does he know these things? You know what I mean?
Where's the camera facing?
It's like, how many Garmin watches have you got? So that it's like, you know, you just like going, you don't need all that stuff, but when you're a runner, when you're into sport, you buy the shit you like. It's cool, like, you know, you feel like it, but someone's doing that to you. And why you actually buy the brand as well. Again, the trainers, or, you know, people go, it's comfortable. It's like going, there's 2 reasons people buy: comfort, but what they look like. Of course. So, you know what I mean? And that's, you know, and you can sell you 5 different pairs of the same thing. So marketers are absolute experts. And I follow a guy called Seth Godin. I've read a lot of his books. I'd recommend him if anyone is into marketing. We'll put a link in. Yeah, Seth Godin. He's an American guy. Got a great book called Become a Purple Cow, or Purple Cow. It's basically, if you're driving along in a field and you see a purple cow, you'll go, whoa, purple cow, as opposed to black and white cows, basically. So he's got stuff on that. And his big thing, and it's now what I use as a mantra on the course I teach, which is the most important thing, I think, in physio or in exercise compliance, is trust and empathy. And that comes directly from him. He's like, because if somebody trusts you, or if you're empathetic and you listen, that person was more likely to trust you. And therefore, that's what marketing companies do. if you, and it came really clear. He asked, why do you buy a brand? And it's quite a hard question. Why do you buy? And I buy a lot of Adidas. I'm a big Adidas fan. And I was like, well, I don't know, I just prefer it. But I'm like, well, it's the same shit as Nike and Reebok. Why do I do Adidas and why don't I buy Nike? And I'm an absolute, pretty stringent on that. And then I looked into it, and it just falls back from like childhood. Manchester United's first jersey was an Adidas shirt. I still have it. I used to love Beastie Boys. Was my first tape. My older brother, one of my older brothers gave me that. That's my first tape. License to Ill, all dripping in Adidas and breakdancing. And I was just like going, oh, Jesus. And then it was like, and Ireland, Euro 88, Ireland beat England, was a massive, that we just set off a crest of a wave of football in Ireland around that time because of that. But they was Adidas. And I remember at the time the football was Adidas. So everything was Adidas. I was absolutely pummeled by marketing and nostalgia. So, and all this stuff was getting me mad. He was like going, this is how you sell things to people. You find out what they love and you talk to them in that language. So, and physios are uncomfortable with marketing a little bit when it comes to, say, the business side or pricing and all that. But I use it in the fact that you're selling exercise. So if you can get somebody and actually sell them what they need based on the evidence and what we think is right for them from a health point of view, not like have 10 sessions for, £1,000. It's, I'm selling you, I'm going to listen, you're going to trust me, and then I'm going to sell you exercise that you want. And you're going to be like, yes, I want that. Yeah. And I want more of it. And then the model then, from a business point of view, is they're going to tell all their friends. Because what you're going to do when you kind of going, well, he listened, for some reason I feel really good when they come out of the clinic. And he listens to CrossFitters because lots of physios don't deal with strength sports. And then they tell all their friends. And then you have a niche market developed by word of mouth because you fucking listen to them. Do you know what I mean? Sorry for swearing, but that's where it comes down to. So I don't know where I've gone there because I've kind of looped around in a bit, but that's how I developed the private practice. It's organic. It kind of came, and next thing I was like, oh, it's happening now. And then bang, I just thought, yeah, this is the right thing to do. I'm a very, I like to, I don't think I'm aware at the time, but I put things in place and I just keep building on those things. And then it becomes clear. I'm envious of people who have absolute solid goals, who just know exactly where they're going. I think that is really hard.
Definitely. And I think this has come up time and time before in a previous interview as well, that I think as physio students, sometimes there is a concern that you don't know where you want to be in physio, because physiotherapy is such a huge position of profession that actually as a physio student, you come out with 3 years, you have covered so many things and you think, well, I don't know which one to do. And I'm like that right now. I'd say I'm pretty focused in terms of physio, but I have no idea where I want to be in 5 years' time. But that excites me, and I've got 2 years of rotations to kind of fathom it all out. Like you said, you've got that time. But it's interesting how that seed was set and you grew into what is, loving private practice and making the most of private practice.
Yeah, like I couldn't be happier with the situation I'm in, but it took an all, like as Tom Goom said in your last week, I had a passion for the stuff. That was a great point he made. Like, and you can see it in people, you see it in you. You get the pattern. Nothing will stop me. Like my private practice, my son was born the week before. Like, that you don't do stuff like that unless you're in love with what you're doing and that you're driven by it, And it tied into me developing my course as well, which I did about 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, with the same thing of going, there's a big niche in physio here, because you mentioned there, what reminded me was that, you leave after 3 years, and even in those 3 years, you still really haven't done enough. Like we know strength training, and it's a big thing that I like, isn't done very well, and exercise compliance is not done very well in uni. It's getting better, I think, and different unis are getting better at it. Mm-hmm. But like, that's it's a bit at the end of that, you're still kind of lacking an awful lot of the basics, like, you know what I mean? So you still, leaving there, unless you've done it before, you're going to just get told what you've been told by the previous physio did it. Hence the 3 sets of 10 getting passed down is nearly like a joke now. But like, that's because that's all they knew. But the key thing was actually we were missing a big part here, was just the intensity part of strength training, for example. But 3 sets of 10 was not wrong. It was just not prescribed correctly. So that 5 years, it's interesting what you said then is about like 5 years, I'm excited. You see, you've turned that's you see. And I think that's, people will struggle with excitement because you've got two ways to label the feeling you're having there. It's kind of intimidating and a bit like, oh God, but also at the same time, you're labeling it just as, well, it's, who knows? This is cool. Maybe I'll go there. I'm not blinkering it on. That's a growth mindset. Whereas kind of like, oh, I don't know where I'm going to go, and panicking about it before it's even happened. And we talked about The Last Dance, and it was a really good comment, Michael Jordan. He lives in the now, and he's going, why am I worrying about missing a shot when I haven't taken the shot yet?
Definitely. Yeah.
That's something my dad has always been talking to me about since I was a kid. It was a book called The Power of Now. And that was just one of the best quotes from like one of the best athletes of all time. Why am I worrying about it until I've taken the shot?
Yeah.
It's just, it's the same thing with newly grad physios. There's no panic. There's really no panic. And I think the first thing, the bit of advice, again, filtering back into what we've just been talking about, is my advice is settle down, take the first 6 months to just thank God you don't have to get marked and you're going to be looked after, over your shoulder, find out where the toilets are, breathe a little bit, just enjoy you getting some money for what you're doing now. But then just get comfortable with being uncomfortable, which is a really cheesy tagline I've robbed from a guy called Vern Gambetta, who's a coach in America. And it's perfect though, because there's loads of times where it's just feel like, can you do a presentation in front of 5 physios? No one wants to do that. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But you've got to have a way of finding the comfort in that. The kind of, it's going to be, even if it's crap, you're going to learn something from that. It's that growth mindset side of things. People struggle with that, and I think that's what you have there when you were saying about getting excited. And I think just work on doing things that are a little bit uncomfortable. It doesn't have to be daily or anything, but just think, well, I should really just push myself there. What's the worst that can happen? Because I see physios 10 years qualified who will be just shivering before doing a presentation in front of 10 physios, like just quaking, don't want to do it, sick about it, and then when they do it, they're just like, and you're right, some of the physios in the room then are going, they're 10 years qualified, I'm 2 years qualified, and I do a better job than this.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing, you know what I mean? And so you don't want to be that physio either. So give yourself little bits of uncomfortable feelings. And then once you start doing that, opportunities start to open up, because you might say yes to that thing that you might have said no to and said, oh, I'll just stay in my safe comfort zone. I might just do that presentation. I might just go in and sit with a surgeon who's going to intimidate and make me feel a bit small. It doesn't matter, because afterwards, you're going to grow from that.
Absolutely, yeah. It's something I've done all sorts. I'm a really bad swimmer, and I'll never forget putting myself in a situation where I was going to do a 500 meter open water swim, and I just thought, what's the worst that can happen? What's the worst that can happen? Well, the worst has happened. I had to hold on to a kayak halfway around because I couldn't finish. But that, I didn't die. It was fine. You've got to put yourself in uncomfortable situations to remember and learn and grow. Definitely.
Yeah, I know it's a cheat. It can come across cheesy a little bit, all that failure stuff. But like, there's a book called Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed. I've got a big reference list. If I can give you a bunch of references as well, books that they're not necessarily physio related as well, if people are interested. Great. Which I think is a big thing. So when I started reading about marketing, and then I was like, oh, wait a minute, I should be reading a lot more of this. So a lot of the stuff I read now is nothing to do with physio or medicine as such. I read an awful lot around psychology and behavior change, or people who are very successful. And their traits and the behaviors they do as well. So it's just on that one, if people wanted to have an idea of those things. But Black Box Thinking is a great book about failure and about developing that kind of. When I read that, I was like, the more you start reading these things, at the start you're like, oh, I'm miles off. It's the old marginal gains thing. You just think, here, this is, when am I ever going to get there? But it's just taking those little small steps and then doing that little bit. And I think when I came to Cornwall, I came down, and it was around the same time I decided to do a master's, and a hip surgeon down here, Mark Norton, said, he said, he got us all together, a whole bunch of physios, and went, I need, people to step up here with hips and help with hip impingement rehab. I think we can do better. And I remember standing up and going, yeah, I think we don't do a good enough job. Didn't go down very well with people, but yeah, I said that, and then I was like going, right, and he was like, okay, cool. He just kind of went, I had a chat with him afterwards, and then he was like, come and sit in my clinic, and I was like, all right, cool. So I did that, and then it was like, it was uncomfortable, and then we started chatting, and then we had some common interests, and then next thing you know, those opportunities then led to more opportunities.
Yeah.
And then when it came to doing my master's, he was like, come down and see me in surgery anytime you want. So we had an interprofessional relationship. We could communicate really well. And then when I had any hip problems, I could email him, and he knows me now. So it's like, okay, Grant. Whereas if you're just a physio and you email him, he's like, I don't know who you are. I've got loads of other shit to do. See you later.
Yeah.
And that's where, linking back to physios who were trying to think, well, whether our rotation's useful. And everyone gives the reasons why, neuro, you can learn stuff, and respiratory, you can learn stuff. And that's grand, but it's a bit vague. I go with the fact that I learned how to communicate with other professionals on wards, talking to doctors, knowing that they're not, if you get an MSK job straight away, you don't see any consultants like a lot of the time, unless you're in a big hospital. Like if you're in my hospital now, you're not going to see a surgeon. You're not going to see any doctors really. You're going to talk to them on the phone, which again comes back to, who are you? I don't know you. There's no relationship, and it can be a little bit hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So if you're in the hospital, you can kind of you can see doctors when they were first graduated, and they're human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Sometimes physios are a bit in that hierarchy of where the physios and they're the big doctors. So it breaks that down, because you're having a laugh, you're going out for pints with them, you're going out for pints with surgeons. Like, there's nothing like going to a conference and going on the lash with a surgeon, because you realize that these guys are fucking normal. These aren't, they're not going to attack you or anything. They're just the same. But you can kind of feel like in the hierarchy of physio, you can get a bit like that. So being in wards and doing rotations, actually, it's communication. It's the thing I said to you. The first thing you need to do is smash your communication. If everything else after that is great, but communication, either talking to other professionals or talking to your patient, is the key thing.
Definitely, yeah. I don't even know where we just went. How did we even get to that point? I've no idea. But anyway.
I think you were asked, I can't actually remember. I thought you were an awful ranter.
I've got a couple of points down here that, actually, no, I'm going to go straight on to another question. So I'm keen to make sure those people who've sent in questions, I'll make sure I get them. So, and again, they all link massively, to be fair, it's fine. And we've had a kind of a two-pronged question here as well from someone who said, when on placement as a student, it can be, really exhausting. And I can definitely agree with that, especially when you're assigned to something that you do find more challenging. And this comes back to this huge broad spectrum of physio. And I feel for physio students that go into physio knowing or thinking they want to go down one route, but obviously you have to do all the others. So you come across a discipline, you find it harder. And the question around this is, how much work should a student be doing outside of their placement hours, if any, and what should it consist of to make most effective use of your time? I think this is
it's a class question. Yeah. The question I would have asked definitely when I was, so that was really good. Fair play to whoever asked that. Because this is hopefully, and there's no, again, you can go anywhere. These are my tips.
Yeah.
And it's based on my understanding of willpower and actual just the ability to cope with learning all day long is not possible. And again, if you're on a particularly stressful environment, your willpower, which is stored in the prefrontal cortex, which is a book that I'd recommend, Willpower Instinct by Biomechanical, psychologist. You've only got a certain amount of it, and you've only got a certain amount of capacity to take in information and be stressed. So you're there all day. It's just learning. My tips is when you get in, it's probably best you do it when you get in. Again, or maybe time food. Food is really important for willpower as well. So whether you need that coffee, or whether you need, or if you drink coffee, or just even fluids, or that bit of food if you have to drive back to where you've come from, so that you've got some energy, because willpower goes off glucose as well. So interestingly, your prefrontal cortex is the last place to get glucose in your brain. It prioritizes everywhere else. That's why you're a bit of a nightmare when you're hungry, because you've no logical thinking. You're a bit like an ape. Give me the food, you're angry, you snap, and then you eat and you're like, oh my God, what's wrong? So having food is actually really important, because you may not have eaten because you're way behind on your notes, and you're just like, I barely ate at lunch because I just had time, and then I'm driving home an hour and I feel like someone's hit me with a fridge. What do I do? So get your nutrition right. And then the next thing is during the day, if you can, pick a maximum 3, minimum 1 thing that you kind of felt that is an issue with the guys, either the tutor's saying, or that you feel that, I needed to brush up on that. I didn't do my neural assessment, I forgot how to do it or whatever, or I just, I'm just not getting certain things done in my placement. I don't know why I'm asking those questions. Whatever it is, it has to be bite-sized though, real small, really easy to solve problems. And write them down in a book if you can, so it'll only take you 2 seconds. Then when you get in from having your snack on the way in, then you promise yourself at least 10 minutes only. So you just say, look, if I can do 10 minutes of just going around those little pointers, whether just even going to, and it need to be bite-sized, because that's why you've got 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Because again, as you said, if you say I'll do an hour, your brain just goes, that's too hard. I just want to sit and watch Netflix. So don't do that. And again, the research is there if you check out that book. So you do 10 minutes, it's called the 10-minute rule. And I use this with patients all the time. Just do it for 10 minutes on that bite-sized information. And that's it. So if you're like after 10 minutes going, I cannot do any more, that's grand. You've done your 10 minutes, go and relax. And then my advice is exercise, mental health, and sleep.
Yeah. Just
like I say to patients, if you like exercise, you go for a run, you feel clear. You might even come back and go, actually, I know what I need to do.
Mm-hmm,
You might need to do the exercise first, potentially. Mental health, if you're into that crack, I love a bit of headspace or just 5 minutes of breathing, whatever it might be, and just calm it down. You don't, I suppose what you don't do is go in and think, some people go in and go, I'm going to listen to a big long podcast on stuff that's way too detailed, or read a paper about a condition. And you're like, reading a paper, I think is just, unless you have to do it for the next day, it's just not going to go in there. And on that point, there's a reason TED Talks are 17 minutes long, by the way. They're 17 minutes because the brain just cannot take any more information. We're even way over with this podcast, with this Zoomcast or whatever it is. People are just, it's a lot of information, never mind after a full day of being hammered by somebody. So my tips are, do 1 or 3 bite-sized things that you need to work on. Either work through them all, but no more than an hour, I would say. And even some nights, give yourself a break.
Yep.
Definitely look after yourself exercise-wise. If you don't like exercise, bloody walk around the block. If you smoke, walk out and smoke. I'm not promoting smoking, but do something to get out, get that flowing, because your brain is not going to take on any more. Big cups, 2-3 hours of work. If anyone does that, fair play. They're better than me, because I couldn't do that. That's Bill Gates stuff.
It's different though, isn't it? I think everyone is, as you said already, but I think I think the majority of people will benefit from hearing that from someone who, is in that situation like you are, to actually 10 minutes in an evening, if it's focused, is a good
it has
idea.
To be focused. Yeah, it has to be focused on something that's going to be useful the next day as well, or you've turned that in so that then it will be able to it can't just be 10 minutes of kind of mindless stuff, or, I read that now, I'm fine.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like for me, a podcast, sometimes in the background, that even just on, say, like tendinopathy, or on a particular, like a big topic like that, just so you can kind of, that it could just go in. You don't have to be, too active with it. It just goes in passively a little bit. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work,
Yeah, no.
That would be my thing. I think, does that answer all our questions? There was, I think, is there anything else on that?
It goes on to the second bit. So, and this kind of links in from the same person. And I love this one because it's something I've battled with at university as well. Is as students, we're always told to reflect, and it's really important. However, sometimes I struggle with the motivation to do them specifically to do with. So this is a physical written reflection. So what ways would you recommend people can reflect and best reflect, and how to structure these reflections so they're actually useful in, say, interviews and future CPD? And that last bit I love, because whoever's written this is already thinking in my head down the right lines in terms of making them useful. So we're told we need to do lots of reflections, and reflections are great. Hit us. What do you think?
Oh man, I love this person's brilliant. Both great questions. I can feel. I think you sent it to me and I read it now, and I can taste the disgust in their mouths about reflections. It was like goals as well, you know, write your goals. And I remember just going, I don't know yet. And I don't really, we have to be specific in time and everything. I'm like going, right, 6 months. It's not going to happen. I just remember being annoyed by it. And reflections were similar, like, you know, reflect on this, reflect on that. And you're like going, it's all about quality again. It's a bit like the 10-minute rule. It's quality over quantity. It's the same thing with learning a skill as well. Get the skill done, you know, well. Yeah. You know, the brain likes that, remembers it. Don't end on it, you know, on a failed rep kind of thing, you know. And my advice then is, I hated writing down reflective things, but what I was good. So I recommend audio recording.
Yeah.
So if you're coming up with an idea, it doesn't have to be perfect. I have a memo on my phone and I just go, right, these are the thoughts I'm having, blah, and I just blur them on there. It doesn't have to be in any order. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is the gist of it. And what you have in your head is to think of, what is this useful to cover quite a few things? Because in it, I don't know, I'm holding the imaginary phone here. God. So what you've got to think about, if it's to do with, and it's exactly why you need to do reflections, is for interviews. Not, you can do reflect if the HPPC come for you, you can do all that. You can write things up, and that's not a problem. The thing is, for how you're in an interview, it's going to come into your head. So it needs to be something quite story-like as well. We like stories, remembering a story that happened, and cover a big area, whether it was a conflict area, a communication type thing. So you're thinking, actually, that was something was really awkward for me. I learned from it, and that would be really useful from a communication point or a conflict type point, as opposed to like, I didn't have a coin and then had to go to a hospital. They're not going to work in an interview because it's too specific. You want kind of broader kind of examples of those kind of topics. Like, as I say, like communication is a big one, and just knowing what to do in situations, being on the phone with an aggressive patient, all right, or how did you deal with that, or how did even maybe you didn't, but you saw a physio, and I've been on, you know, where my colleague's gone through something, I'm like, oh Jesus, yeah, that's a reflection for me, because I didn't know that. Okay. And they got caught, but I didn't. But I could have easily been caught. So is that how? When it comes to interviews, you need to be able to draw on that. So you don't need to reflect on, I don't know what the volume of reflection is like. I'm not amazing at it, to be honest. But what I do is I have a list of definitely things that stand out. And there'll be about 3, maybe 5 things here. And that's what's important in my opinion. But the sneaky thing would be, I think she was saying, like, I'm on placement and I'm tired and all that, record it on your phone. And then at the end of placement, or set a date, 100%. It's like when you goal plan, you need to have a date when you're like going, right, there's my hour where I type up my reflections. And then I do think a little bit more how this would work in an interview. And then if you're a bit like, I don't know how this reflection would work in an interview, ask someone who's been interviewed. Would this be a good kind of story? And like, all you have to do is ask a physio, and they'd be like, that would cover, these are kind of common questions you get in interviews. So that's a nice story. Yeah, great. Or you don't know, and you're preparing for an interview, and when you're preparing for an interview, you go to, there's loads of questions out there. People kind of, look, you're going to be asked probably about this stuff, but you just have to go to your reflections, go, that will cover that, that will cover that. You've it all written out in your little template, and probably have something done already. Don't do a template when you're tired. Do it again in a time when you've got a bit of time. Do the things that you need to be on there that would be relevant when you're answering an interview question. Record it on your voice, type it up. You see what I mean? You see the process there? It makes it a little bit easier, and then it's relevant to your interview. I don't know. That's what I would do.
Yeah. No, I think yeah, I'd agree with all of that. I think the reflections that I've used have been those ones that incorporate conflict and team working and difficult situations and things like that. And all sorts of things like that. The other thing only thing I'd add to that is a bit of advice I got from mine as well, was to make sure that there is an outcome from it. So I think as students, we reflect and we write all these lovely things down about how we feel about things and how it went, etc. But we miss that vital bit about, so what? What are you going to do about that? What are you going to do? How are you going to take that
the plan?
Practice? Yeah.
And then what you did then, exactly. Yeah. So like, if you do find this reflection, like, did you go then and so that's the really important thing. And I think that's the other thing with that, linking back to what I would do as a band 5 and being uncomfortable, or getting comfortable being uncomfortable, is do teaching. I'm as a band 7, I'm not going to be like going, I expect this to be a really good presentation. So I'm not going to be expected. So to do it then, you know, do presentations, teach other people, volunteer for talking or doing something, because that will link in again with your interview and your stories, and it all kind of rolls into one there. And if you say, oh yeah, I learned that, then what I did was I went and I did some research, and then I presented that to the team, or I presented it at uni, or whatever I did. You know, that's the money shot in an interview.
Yeah, definitely. And it helps consolidate what you learned in the first place as well. So it's kind of a...
exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, that's it. You're like, until you teach something, you don't know it, in my opinion.
And it's definitely, I mentioned it in the interview yesterday with Tom, same thing, you know, I used to teach the dog about stuff, because just regurgitating that out is really helpful, and it works the same with reflections. You can do the same thing.
Did the dog reflect on it?
Yeah, she just walked off into the garden most of the time, or just kind of sighed.
I love you're serious. I think so. You know, she didn't get a job. She hasn't got a job yet.
I think so. Yeah, yeah. She regurgitated it to the sheep. It's fine.
So
no, I think that's a really good one. That's really going to be quite useful for people going into placement. I think that's quite a key thing. And then
hopefully,
leading on from that, we go on to looking at the transition. And this is something that actually I thought from me I wanted to know a bit more about as well, is your transition from in that specialist physio role. So we're talking band 6 to an ESP. I think you've already mentioned it a little bit about with the hip surgeon.
Yeah.
And how that kind of transition. So
yeah, I think, there's some of it is stuff I covered. I think the question that you sent me was, again, it was a bit like, how did you find the transition?
And
I think it was interesting. The transition started, let's say, in 2010. So so it started then building up what I think I needed to be an ESP, and put all the hard work into that. So when it came to, I spent loads of time with surgeons. When I did my master's, one of them was a clinical placement, and I had 2 mentors, Peter Sharance at Exeter and Andrew Murphy, shoulder surgeon at Plymouth, who were brilliant. They were like class. And then the ESPs I had as well on there, Rachel Andrews from Plymouth and Andy Rich, and a few other people who were just really, you know, when you have a good teacher, when they don't make you feel small in the clinic, they made me feel just as valuable as anyone else. All 4, you know, those 4, but there's loads others. I remember just going, I feel really good being in here. I don't feel like I'm an outsider. But they beasted you. They made me, you know, think, and I was, you know, sweating in there, and that was the Oskies were horrendously nerve-wracking. But again, even in the Oskies, they made me feel quite relaxed. It wasn't about catching me out. So when I was putting myself through a kind of like gradual, you want to do a Peter O'Sullivan, I was at gradual exposure to the stress of being an ESP before I actually got the, you know, I did get a couple of acting up jobs, because they were few and far between at the time, and then eventually it was a permanent role came up. By the time the permanent role came up, I was just like, I'd done so much of everything else and got so much experience. It made the role then going, I know what I'm, you know, it was more comfortable. It wasn't, I've seen some physios get an ESP job without the hard work, and it's like hit by a wall. Right. They, you know, so they're delighted that they've got this job and sometimes it can be just because of the circumstances. Not many people go for the job, or there's not much competition, and they need to fill a gap, and then they go in, and they're good physios, but they get absolutely pummeled by the buck stops at you in a lot of ways. You have to know whether you're going to refer on to a surgeon, and I've definitely been, you know, called on that sometimes. Why are you referring this? Why haven't you done this? You know, those kind of emails they're uncomfortable emails, but they're not uncomfortable because I've been making myself uncomfortable since I started my job, like I said. So these uncomfortable, it's not nice. I don't go home going, oh yes, I've just been, you know, slammed by a surgeon, but I'm like going, right, I know what I did wrong, and the first thing I'm going to do is never do that again.
Yes.
But I'm all right with that, because, you know, and that's the ego again, like we all have one. So it's kind of that transition. When I got in there, it was actually all right, because I kind of, you know, I'd earned the stripes a little bit. And at the time I was actually raging, because I had to do 2 acting up jobs. I was just chomping at the bit. I was like, if I don't get a job here soon, I'm going to crack up here, you know, really, really frustrating. It's like 5 years in the making. But actually then it was actually when I really had the stripes, it was actually, I know I can do this well. So I don't know if that's advice or anything, or if that's possible. Sometimes if you get a job, you got to learn on the job. And that's the other thing. If you do have to learn on the job, then you probably have to do all that stuff in those first few years. And some ESPs have to do that. They just have to spend the time but you do have to put the work in. If you want to be at that level and good, I always think of people like going, sometimes people want to be spoon fed. They're learning and stuff. What are you going to, where's our money? Where's the cost? I was like going, I've never been on a course that I'm not willing to pay for. If I get it free, oh yes, yeah, thank you very much. But if I'm going to go on a course and they don't fund it, I'm still going on it. That's the way you got to look. Sorry?
If you want to go enough, if it's a course you want to go
on. Yeah. Otherwise, why? It's another point about free stuff. Anything like, and at the moment, it might bring into another question in a way, because I think I've answered that other one. I think you just got to work hard, put the effort in, and get the right. I got an MSc as well. That helped. Doesn't mean you have to have one, but I think most ESPs they look at some postgrad qualification. But where was I going? I was going to go on. I was kind of transitioning from something there. What was I talking about? Oh damn, that's terrible. I can't remember what I was saying. It's gone. It'll come back to me. Can't remember what we was talking about there.
Transitioning to the ESP role. I'm just going to sort of, I think,
just the free stuff.
But that was it. Yeah, go on.
It was free. Sorry, it was free. It was free. Yeah, it was free stuff. Just because it's quite current at the moment, and there's a lot of and I feel it for physios now. So this is the other thing: just pros and cons to free education and free stuff, but there's no value in it sometimes. So a recommendation. This is what I wanted to get across really for advice is now, like when I started, it's just nothing like this. You have to travel to courses, and you have to now you can do it all online. There's people free. You got guys like Tom Goom and all these brilliant guys putting out free stuff all the time, and it's like information. You go on Twitter, it's like going, oh my god, YouTube, Instagram, how many different exercises you can do for the same feckin' thing. It's like, okay, it's rotator cuff exercise. Now you can do it in 20 different ways, which is the best one. And it's quite interesting when you grind it all down. There's probably only a couple that you need to do, and it's just all information overload and overwhelm. And free is a marketing ploy for people. It's nothing new in the world here. You offer something free. It's not always free. There's something else there. There's an email address you give. There's other products that they sell on to you. That's just business, and that's not a bad thing. That's just the way that people make money. But so just be wary of getting information overload by online stuff and having that pressure. And it was that first year of qualification as well, of being a band 5, like going on courses. And I think someone asked about doing a master's and they're not even qualified yet. Like when I did my master's, I was 5 years qualified. And when I was doing it, I was watching the other people on the course, and they were all quite young, did it straight after a degree. And they were only worried about marks. And when the tutor would be doing stuff, and I'd be like, it was biomechanics, and it was pretty heavy, but it was brilliant. And I remember just asking it, and I was like going, oh, like a patient, and she's like, yeah. And they were all like going, huh? Because they had no experience of how to apply this quite detailed stuff. And I was like, this is brilliant. This is exactly what I need to do for my patients. Whereas if I'd gone straight in from uni for that, I would have been like, all it would have been is like rabbit learning. What do I need to do this? My most favorite piece of education was my master's by a mile. It was tough, but I enjoyed every bit of it, because I had taught, like, I can go straight, like I did it part-time. So I went straight in the next day and bang, applying it, learn it, apply it. Doing a master's, you got to really think about why you're doing it. It's a big commitment, it's a big cost. And you gotta really find out, but you won't know really. Look, I don't know. I didn't know for 5 years. Some people are quicker on it. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's a big commitment, and you want to get it right. You want to do your research about why you're doing it and what you want to get out of it. So many people course collect and look for letters, and they just get that. And to be honest, all they're doing is just getting a little tick in their head, and ticking off, I've done this, I've done that. But really, where is the learning? It's like reflective practice. What have you done? Have you then taught somebody? Have you put this into practice? Where is the learning? Because people go to courses and never read that book. They go mad if they don't have a booklet. They never read that booklet ever again.
Yeah. It's how you're going to use it in practice. And if you haven't got the wherewithal to use it in practice, it's quite hard to retain that new information. It could be the best bit of knowledge in the world, but if you can't then use it, you're going to lose it. And yes, you might be able to get it back. Exactly, it is. And I think as students, especially at the moment, there is And I'd say there's some really good free stuff going on that is aimed at students.
Yeah.
But there is so much of it that as students, I think I'm victim of this as well, is you see posts of people doing this, that, and the other, and you feel that if you're not doing it, you're not keeping up, you're not as good. And
exactly
dangerous.
Yeah.
Tom mentioned something on the last interview about you've got to have a purpose for doing what you're going to do. If you're going to do a course, if you're going to do learning.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it's that kind of like, what's the plan here? Why am I going on this particular course? Because we know setting a goal gives you a dopamine hit, which feels good. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do this. That's going to solve my problem. If I go on Andrew's strength and conditioning course, that's that covered. Tick.
Yeah.
And then Monday is kind of like I always say, don't be a course collector. Don't, what's your one thing from the course? One thing, I don't care what it is. If it's about psychology of communication, or if it's about developing tension, make sure that's the first thing you do on Monday morning. Yeah. And I always say to people, in 6 weeks' time, you've got to teach elements of what I've taught you. Otherwise, it's gone and it is never coming back. So any course you do, like James Moore's course, who is a hip and groin course I did in 2011 or something like that. That was when I got a real kick of it's that the Dunning-Kruger effect. When you think you know stuff, it's after a few, and you really don't know fuck all. You're just really cocky, but you've no idea. He absolutely took me off the peak of cockiness and just dropped me into a chasm of desperate. But actually, it was great because I was just enthralled by his knowledge and how he presented it, and then I went on and became a strength and conditioning coach off the back of that. Right. But I recorded his whole entire lecture, the 2 days on my phone. So I just set it down. I just said, right, I'm going to test this out now. And I put it out and I just listened to his thing. And I really enjoyed it for the first time because I have terrible handwriting. So I never write really well anyway, but I panic. So I write everything down. So I sat there, audioed, lovely, which is the way I learn. And then afterwards, I spent 6 weeks typing it all up. And it was horrendous. It was really painful experience because you have to listen back to it. But it was great. And I was typing up going, oh my God, I've completely missed all that. I completely missed that. I completely missed that. And I was going for I was working with a hip surgeon. So I wanted to be a hip ESP at the time. So I was like, right, this is great. And I had a full PDF, like a file, big thick file of all the notes from that. And I just had that I still have it, still use it. It's still really useful. But it was when I was like, right, if I'm doing a course, I've got to have these little things. So when I'm writing notes from courses, it's just little bullets, bang, nuggets in what I'm going to then take away and actually use on it. So I did an Adam Meekins one recently, and he said something. I went, all right, I don't do that, or I don't do it enough. Bang. For that 2 weeks, I made sure it was like when we didn't do cranial nerves, I would do it the odd time. And then I went, right, 6 weeks cranial nerves until cranial nerves are just happening. Yeah. Blood pressure. Didn't do it regularly enough. Now blood pressure is just, it's just there. It's part of this. If I'm not doing it, it feels weird. Yeah. So even if it's one thing, and the more experience you get, it becomes where you have to find that little golden nugget. But it's those really smart people are the ones who do that. They go on courses and they just look for that thing, and then that makes them that little bit better. And everyone has that something that, whether that's a band 5 doing a presentation, you're like, shit, I didn't know that. That's just new stuff. Great, bang, beauty.
I think that's a really good takeaway point from this chunk here is if you're going to go on courses, take something from it. But, if you're going to make notes, don't write everything down, but write something you can take away and then go and do it. So you're going on a course to make you better at what you do. You're not going on a course to say, I've got a CPD certificate to put in my file that means I can cover an HCPC check. You're doing it to make you a better physio. And you need to know what are you going to be better at from doing that course. Yeah.
Simple test is, would I pay for it? Yeah. If you say yes, you pay for it, and then you're on the right road.
Definitely. Okay, that's a good one off the back of that one. Fantastic. So next one. So moving into, so you've got that graduation. You come out of university. What's the biggest mistake you see new grads? We'll keep to new grads. What's the biggest mistake you see them make in MSK?
We kind of covered it, so people will be bored of me saying this now. The biggest mistake is not concentrating or not working on communication.
Okay. So that's,
not exposed, that is that's the big, they don't do that enough, where they just try and, they just don't see the value in it, I don't think. Well, I didn't anyway. And what I see around, and I made a list actually, which might be useful. I think I've got it somewhere here. And I was thinking about 2 band 5s that I've had recently that I went, they're on the money here. They went to band 6 in a year. And I thought, what are the qualities they had? Not that I had other band 5s, but I've had really good band 5s. So it's not about good or bad, but these 2 were exceptional in the fact that they just went boom like that. And I was thinking, what are their traits? What did they do well?
Okay, yeah.
And it was kind of, and so I sat down and I kind of think, and the first thing is their communication, 100%. They worked out the politics in the room quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember I remember going, why did they always feel like they were nearly band 6s before they were band 6s in a way? They just weren't cocky, they were self-confident. And that's there was no argument. It was just like, they were very straight. They had straight answers. They knew what they were coming into the question. It was always to do with, it was a growth mindset. They have growth mindsets, basically. They were looking to develop, not just kind of tick a box. So they sorted the communication with the admin staff, and that's another test. They work with they see that that's a really important relationship, and you could just see them volunteering for little things, and both of them did that excellently well. When they came and asked a question for me as well, it never was asked again, or certainly there was some learning in the sentence they would ask then. So they would come in the problem patient sessions, and then they would say, oh yeah, from before I did that, and I remember doing that, but then this happened, what do you think? And I never felt frustrated with them either, because again, their communication approach was just that they knew how to read people. And that was the same when I heard them doing their subjectives. They were natural speakers. Now, I know not every physio is going to be a brilliant natural person, have that natural banter or chat with patients. And they may have come from that kind of quite rigid, as questions be really hyper professional. And that's grand. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it can make people, patients as well, but also other people in the department feel like that. Mm-hmm. And that then, if you're having to kind of go into a problem patient, me being the senior tutor, will be like, oh, fucking hell, I've got to, this is going to be a bit uptight. And I hate uptight like that. I want the opposite of that, in my opinion. I like relaxing, a bit of crack and a bit of fun, focused, but we're on the same level. What I learned from people like Andy Rich and Andrew Murphy and these guys, they made me feel equal, which was an absolute classic skill to learn. And these guys did it. And when they applied their information again, they volunteered for the uncomfortable stuff. And I just thought that's it. They did everything to a T like that. And I think that's what I'd recommend. They're just not working on those, people call it soft skills, but just that communication and understanding how the department works. And then identifying the learning styles, and then being uncomfortable. Volunteer and do stuff that makes you feel a little bit, nervous. Yeah. They don't do that. People don't do that enough. That's the mistake they make.
Putting yourself outside of your comfort.
Because as you said, after 3 years, you're just like, after 3 years, you're just like, oh my God, all I wanted to do was drink pints. I qualified, I just had enough. 6 years, I was like, spent the year, but I knew after about 3 to 6 months, you're like, right, where am I at here? Give yourself a bit of time to get into it, but then be like, right, now I need to start to kind of like see the lay of the land here. Who do I need? Who are my kind of people I like? And that's the other thing as well, finding the right mentors. Because not everyone's you can have really smart people, but not everyone gets on. I've met some people who are amazing, but when I've spoken to them, I went, oh, Jesus, I couldn't work with you. You do my head in. And then I've met other people who are like, oh no, we'd be unbelievable.
Mm-hmm. And you can tap into it.
That's the other thing. Yeah, and I think that's when you're trying to get a band 5 job. I think that was another thing I thought about as well when we started this interview a few weeks when you asked me to do it. I was like, when you're looking for a job as a band 5, do your research on where you're going to work, because sometimes I suppose maybe you don't have an option, maybe you've got a house and stuff and you want to live in a certain area and that's grand, but still look around, find out who's there, or what's their vibe there, is there mentors there, do they do stuff, and when you're in the interview as well, make sure you've done your hard bit at the end and kind of challenge them on what their CPD is, how often it is, what are they doing, what's this department's goals, where do they see, are people got any interest in this? Because when you get in your first job as well, you can get rutted. And in the Southwest, you know what it's like. You know, it's not like London where there's loads of jobs kind of possibly going around. You know, you can kind of be a bit like right there, and then you go, oh, well, I've been here now. Maybe I've got a partner and they don't want to leave. And now you're stuck here. You know, so if you're young and you're flexible, that's something to maybe think about when it comes to getting your first job. You can always move from it. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not saying like, have you gone Durford? Is that where you are?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, so like there's loads of exposure there. You know, I just think it's, you know, my bias, if people are going to put a gun to my head, it's like going, yeah, big teaching hospitals. Because like I got Royal London, I had big guys like, you know, Dylan Morrissey, and I like consultant physios and people with PhDs looking at me doing a presentation on patellofemoral pain. You know, like 30 physios and some of the best researchers in the country. And I'm like going, you know, once you've done that, everything is easy after that. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So like at the time I remember, and it was a big Bengali speaking, so there was communication was super hard. So it was true interpreters. So that was another thing, you know. So I had to deal with being in a foreign country. I'm Irish, and so I was in England. Then I was in East London, so it was a big culture difference. And it was just I'm taking all the time. I think Tom was talking about his talks. So you're taking all these kind of things that you've learned on those. Now it's not the only way to do it, as he said, and I agree with that. Some people, you go straight into sport or whatever if that's what you want to do, but there's loads of other things. There's no rush, is what I'm trying to say. I think you spend a few years being a physio before you think you're fucking, you know, the king of the castle. Like no one's brilliant in 5-10 years. Like just, you know, you might see people, as you said, you see online, you think, oh, look at James doing all these things. Like, well, that's James's lifestyle, though. You don't know where he's come from. You don't know what his options are, and things could change for him. You know, don't set yourself out that you think, you know, I can't look at Tom and be like, look at him, like he's doing amazing, like, you know. And just some things like, oh wow, that's just. He's really got his things going there as well. But then I have to kind of go, yeah, but I got my things going on. You have to have that self-confidence, and you don't need to do that. Exactly. I actually love those guys because I've got them to use as, you know, great resources, you know.
And that's it. And it's one good thing about physio is a big community of being able to use that. But another thing I always say to people is, if you're looking on social media for stuff, you're always going to see what people are doing well. You're going to see that, oh, so-and-so is doing this, he's doing that. But you're not seeing what they're not doing and what they're struggling with and what they can't do. You know, I don't promote massively on social media that I have absolutely struggled with academic writing and essays all through my university life. And I've relied on all the practical stuff to drag me up. But you don't see all of that. So that's another thing to really bear in mind as well, is, you know, what other people are doing is great, but, you know, you're doing great things as well.
Again, just going, because it was the same in interviews, Tom was talking about, like, he's got to have a wife that understands.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's, you know, we you know, again, you don't know people's situations. I had 3 kids under 2. So we had twins born just before my son was a 2. And they were born 10 weeks early. So we had 3 months. I was off work, had to be in and out of neonatal for 10, you know, they were 10 weeks premature.
Yeah.
And then I've got 3 kids under 2. Like, it nearly blew me mind, like. And it's one of those things, I think, you know, one of those kind of life hacks for me, and what I teach on a course about patients and just anyone really, is I think I've done it earlier on in case it came up, which was like basically three circles. And you put your health and fitness in one, your work and your family and social history, or your social life in these blocks. And I kind of look at people and I say, well, like, where everyone tries to put, I always ask this question on the courses. I was like, where, you know, do people try to be good at all these things? Mm-hmm. And they do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they try and be the best at everything. You're trying to do your best at work, pretty much. Well, guys like myself and yourself are trying to push and do well at work. You're not trying to go into work and get by. Some people do, but anyway. Health and fitness. Again, if you're into it, you want to be in good shape. You want to feel fit and healthy. And then your family, you want to be the best dad, brother, sister, whatever you are, and social, and see your friends and not be a loser, like, you know, and whatever. And I'm a big social person. So when I had that lifestyle, my health and fitness, so I put something like going, this just went down, because work was mental. I have a private practice. I can't give that up. I can't give up. You have to earn the money. Mm-hmm. I've got you know, my family's life has gone nuts. Turns my house has turned into a zoo. And it's like 3 kids, and you know, the 3-year-olds now, they're twins, they don't sleep. So it's like, it's crackers, like, you know. So, but my health and fitness went down and my mental health went down. I struggled big time. like I was in bad work for about 4 or 5 months. I was just like, and because I couldn't do the health and fitness side. There was no time, there was no energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I ended up having to sort myself out, and I use a WhatsApp group where I basically, I exercise every day now, and whatever that might be. Now, whether that's I might have different focuses on what that is, but I slowly had to fit that in. And the reason for the everyday is that at least if I did 10 press ups, I was ticking that kind of, you know what, Andrew, you're still all right, man.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't doing any of that, and it was absolutely I'd done fitness and health, fitness all my life, all my education's fitness and health promotion, and now I'm not doing any of it. Yeah. I wasn't putting weight on, which I was worried about, because I don't want to do that, but I was just, because of stressing so much. But I was just like, wait a minute, what am I doing? I'm out doing courses about do this and this, and I'm like, rocket. And people don't see that stuff. And what I did, and patients the same. So I put that up. I said, where are we at with your work? Well, your work's this and that. Well, where are you going to fit those exercises in? Well, you're telling me you got a week. We got this week. So when you're doing exercise compliance, you've always got to think, right, where's the time? And people say, oh yeah, how much time you've got? Everyone says, I've got all the time. I'll do whatever it takes. And after 3 or 4 weeks of our therapy, sometimes these exercises, well, a lot of the time they're boring. And they do stuff they don't really want to do. So it goes. And if the pain eases a little bit, they'll probably be like, it's kind of getting better now. See you later. Exercise compliant, bang. So it's kind of like, where is this going to fit? And how are we going to promote habits? And how are we going to promote behavior change? And I think it's the absolute, I think someone asked about the future of physio. That is the secret. How we can get people to do the basics long enough over time and change behavior in some way, or certainly have some impact on behavior. Yeah. And that allowing people to know where they sit with regards, look, you really want to be the best at work, but it's just not possible with the family life you've got. Yes. Or you're going to lose some family life. Because if you're working 12 hours, your social life, you're working 12 hours a day because you have to and you enjoy that. That's grand, but you are going to compromise that. Same with athletes. They compromise their everything. Like the athlete life is, I think that's why I couldn't be a pro footballer. I just mentally couldn't cope with the amount of it's shot. It's like, people don't think about that. Oh, it's great. Like, it's not great. Michael Jordan says it's boring. Exactly. You don't want to be me. You don't want to be me. It's shit. I don't get any private time. And that takes, he's driven by something inside him that makes him want to compete. And that's what all athletes have. But like, again, in normal life, the same thing. If work goes, billionaires and millionaires, Elon Musk is who Elon Musk is, Tesla. Mm-hmm. Like, he's divorced, and you see loads of, when you read his book, the guy doesn't sleep sometimes. Bill Gates, like 3 hours sleep, 4 hours sleep. Like, these people are just, everything goes into that. Something has to give, And I think, I don't know why I've gone on this rant, but it's just kind of just making sure you are where you are and all those things. And I always keep that in balance. And my 3 things every day that I need to do is to keep those 3 in the way. So what do I need to do to make that work life keep ticking on, keep moving forward? I don't need to be, the best physio in the world, but I need to be progressing in some way. What do I need to get done? I need to do interview prep for this. Do you know what I mean? Or I need to prep slides for a presentation. That has to be done. I need to be nice to my family and kids. But when you're stressed at work and you come in, you can be shitty. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. I used to have to, when I was going through that tough patch, I'd sit in the car for 10 minutes and just be like, right, I've got to snap out of this. I'm going to come in with a big miserable face on, and my kids are going to see that, and they're only 3 and 4. So I can't do that. And my wife's going to be like, she's had them all day. So she's like, and I'm going to come in moody. It's so easily done. And then that affects then the roll on your health and your stress and your sleep. So I think, people just need to don't get too overwhelmed by that. Free stuff is great, but make sure when you are doing the free stuff, don't just, and I'll take that free thing, and I'll take that free. Now I've got a bunch of free things, I'm not doing anything. It's like when you go on Twitter and you scroll, and the amount of times I save stuff and never read them. Yeah. Like I've got a folder of save stuff, and I'm like, that's brilliant, but I really can't be arsed reading that right now. It's huge. And then sometimes I'm like going, I have that thing somewhere, and then I can't remember where I've stored it. Yeah, it's the one thing you store. I think you just crack it up. Anyway.
It's interesting. You talk about all of that. I think one of the key things that you've highlighted more than anything is everyone's going to have a different strategy for some of those things you talked about there, but it's having an awareness of it in the first place. Because if you're not aware, say, take those 3 dimensions as you talked about there, even in the first place, having an awareness of it as a student, as a a qualified physio, as someone with a family and other things going on, if you're quite obsessive and focused and passionate and driven by things, if you don't have an awareness of other things that are important to you, you lose focus on those, and then they drop, and you get that, that drop down. Whereas if you're aware of it all and you're a bit more kind of have a holistic view, you're more aware if something's dropping down, like you just said there. You had an awareness of things. You had an awareness so much that you stopped in the car before you went in the house, because you knew that was something that was there. And that's that kind of ongoing.
Yeah, because once you can do it, it's to control the controllables.
Yeah.
Because it's the Michael Jordan, I don't worry about the shot I haven't taken yet.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, nothing's happened yet. So I'm not, and this isn't something that mental health you have to practice every day. Like, I sound like I'm just, when I say this, I'm like going, I had a terrible day yesterday. Oh man, I was a beast yesterday. It's just out of nowhere. Just like not motivated, feeling like everything's just falling apart. The whole thing about trying to get back my practice going again. Last week I was fine.
Yeah.
What happens, and then, but it's like, how do I win? How do I not lose that day? So I go and I get a really good gym session done. I try and rescue something with my kids and family, so I'm not a moody kid all day. I try and win the day somehow, something. And I think I did something with my slides. I made some notes. I was getting annoyed about the structure, and it was just one of those days but you have to do something to win it. Yeah. I think I listened to a decent podcast as well, or something like that last night. You just did something that just got me through, and I thought, right, well, I'll wake up tomorrow and be different. And it has been different. It's been good, and this has been great crack as well.
And it's back to those 10 press-ups, isn't it? Something that you can say, I did that. I got something, a goal ticked off. It's that dopamine rush you talked about earlier. It's just something there, and setting yourself or doing something. So no, that's great advice for students and new grads when things can become overwhelming and an awful lot going on and an awful lot of pressure potentially to do a lot of things.
Yeah, definitely.
100%. So I think so this is quite a good one here. I think now we start going on to some more specifics of some kind of physio stuff, actually, I suppose. And this is actually
I don't know anything about that. I'm not a physio. Yeah, I think I just clean the windows around here.
Fake physio.
So I couldn't resist. Go on.
So this is actually from a student that you had on placement. I won't mention their name, but it's good. It's a good question. So this is.
I hope I made them feel relaxed.
Well, this was sent with a very shaky hand, I think, to be honest. And if nervous wreck. So
probably all the swearing I did.
So creating tension with exercises. And they found it really helpful. And they recommended that other people might find it helpful as well.
Yeah.
So I think we would cover that.
Oh, it's the missing link in rehab. It's you're just not taught about tension. Comes back to being uncomfortable again. So when you actually do strength training, strength training is massively linked to nearly like the pain system as well. It's kind of similar. It's like threat. So when you put if you put weight or trying to lift something, like let's take squat or deadlift, for example, not deadlift, squat, because with the squat, you have to come down first.
Yeah.
So, generally, if you've got a bar, for example, let's just take a bar, not. So you take a bar and you have to come down. So eccentrically, you're stronger 120% or something like that. So you're way stronger eccentrically. So you can kind of come down, but then you got to come back up again. So your brain is working out, especially if you're untrained. The threat is, am I going to snap something? Is something going to break? The receptors, the Golgi tendon organs and things like that are trying to work out, is there a threat? So you'll either just not go down very far, or when you go down, it'll just go and you'll buckle, and then that's where it's dangerous, unless you set up safety bars. Because when you go down there and the experience and knowing that you can deal with this weight and that tension and that feeling in your legs, that really it's hard work. You need to experience that in a safe environment first before you can get on a barbell squat, right? So, whereas like a deadlift, you either try and pick it up or you can't. It either comes up or it doesn't. Now, you still need loads of tension, but what I mean is the safety is less, if you like, because it's not going to crush you, or it's not like a bench press that'll just pin you to the deck, you know what I mean, if there's no one around, for example. So tension is something I use and that I teach an awful lot, is because it's how you cue it as well. And coaching and cueing is a big part of what physios, I don't think, again, get taught. So how you create tension is even like basic glute bridges. You'll get people and they'll just be up and down and up and down, and glute bridges are a bit crap or they don't work or whatever. It's a bit like, because you are just moving through the range of movement. There's no conscious contraction of the muscle. There's no, and one of the best researchers out there at the moment, Brad Schoenfeld in the States, if you don't know anything about strength training, you've got to follow that guy. Him and Chris Beardsley produce loads of free stuff and amazing information. And he's a hypertrophy. He's written a book on hypertrophy, and he's got that. If you in order to get an increase in the size of the muscle fibers, you need to contract the muscle throughout its range. You're not, rather than just moving through the range.
Okay.
So it's kind of developing that tension. So if I get up from a chair, so if I can train myself to create more tension, to make it harder to get up off the chair, because strength training is inefficient. You know, you don't carry a weight around to move faster. It's hard. So as I go up, I'm learning to create that tension, even though this is only body weight, but I'm telling my brain, this is safe. This is hard work, because when I have the bar on my back, or I'm trying to get that extra bit of load or a progression, then when that's on there and that happens in my legs, I'm used to it. The threat is less. My brain has gone, no, I don't need to put the brakes on here. This is okay. We've been here before. We know what this uncomfortable feeling is. Yeah. So you can teach tension, and if you go to any good strength coach, that's the first thing they'll be doing. And it transforms your lifts. So I'll be teaching in the Therapy Live conference about some of this and how I can change. Like someone who comes in with the sore back sometimes, and they set up for the deadlift, and they go, yeah, that's where I get my back. And just by some coaching cues and maybe some tension development, they're like, oh, that takes my pain away from my back, and I'm now feeling it in my butt and my legs. Just by that. Because they just didn't, it's a push through the legs. Whereas a lot of people with the deadlift, well, they go straight up with the back and they pull rather than push.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, this is a big talk, and I don't want to rant because we'll be here all night. So so if you want to go to Therapy Live.
Yes.
You know, at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll be talking about that as well a little bit more and show a few examples. But creating tension is not with this, because you can do that with grannies and granddads. You know what I mean? If you want to put them in the bracket. And I'm certainly not ageist, but you know, often people say, "Oh, I can't do that with that population." Yeah. That's the population you need to be doing it. You know, because their 1 rep max might be getting out of a chair. You know, and they don't know how, and that, I don't know, that feels really kind of, because they're not used to it. And as a coach, physio, you're going, that's okay. You're all right. You're reassured. That's that's okay. That's not your thing. This is, and if they're like, it's too hard. Okay, we'll raise it up a little bit. Now create that tension and move on. Oh yeah, fine. Yeah, right. Now we're there. So they get used to it, and it gets motor recruitment. That's what motor recruitment is. That's how you're going to get your neural change. It's not even about hypertrophy here. Jesus, we're rarely involved in hypertrophy in our game sometimes. This is just about coaching cues of that, and that's anything from a calf raise to rotator cuff work. It's that absolute intention and that tension in the muscle that you need, if you're after strength, that is. Yeah.
And as you said, that.
So whoever that was, fair play to you.
Yeah. So it's obviously stuck there.
What did you just say there?
I was just saying about that intention.
Well,
quite a good one. Quite a good word that kind of.
It's the number one thing that people take away from my course when they come in. They email me back and say, I started doing that and it's just transformed it, because people were afraid of it. Yeah. Like one of my tests as well I'll do is I'll get a 20 kg kettlebell if I have one on the course, and I'll walk up to somebody who now, sexist wise, I'll always go to a female, because it's traditionally, men are like, give us a bit more on-y. Women will be, especially if I don't think they maybe do strength training, and I'll hand them the 20 kg kettlebell, and 9 times out of 10 it's, whoa, what's that? I don't know what that is, or it's very kind of like, and it's 20 kilos, and then I give it to them, and then they hold and go, oh yeah, that's grand. But there was an initial, I don't like this, and this is potentially going to be too heavy, and I'm like going, so how are you then coaching your patients, or what's your body language like when it comes to lifting things? And because 20 kilos isn't that much. A lot of people have to lift that a lot. So even your body language about picking things up and lifting and creating that tension and actually reducing the fear in patients. Look, I think you can lift this. I've done my assessment. I'm happy enough that nothing's going to be wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go into this position, see if you can pick that up. You say you pick up your kids who are 10 stone, or not 10 stone, sorry, say 2-3 stone.
Yeah.
This is what we're looking at here now. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Give them kind of other analogies. I'm a big fan of metaphors and analogies. Kind of separate a dumbbell and a kettlebell into something else. And then they go, oh, right, like it's not a threat. Again, it's like pain. If someone thinks it's a threat, they're going to think it's going to be more painful, It
links into how pain works, doesn't it? In terms of experience.
Yeah. It's exactly the same. Is this weight it's like powerlifters will say, if you convince yourself you're not going to lift the weight, you ain't going to lift the weight. That's why they have to be like, sometimes very kind of like, it's going to happen. They have mantras. They think of certain stuff that might happen to get the adrenaline going. If they're thinking, oh, no, I'm not feeling great today, it's unlikely to happen.
Yeah.
Strength is a big mind thing as well,
Definitely. I think it links quite well into, I'm going to put a link down below between for your chats with Johnny Lawrence, because you guys talk about this a bit as well.
Oh yeah.
I think if this bit of a talk has kind of interested you a little bit, I'd first of all say, Therapy Live's coming up. I'm going to get this wrong. I think it's the 26th of June. 27th.
It's a Friday. 27th maybe.
27th,
26th. Yeah, it's a Friday.
Because I was meant to be getting married on the 27th. So 26th of June. It is still happening next year, by the way. She hasn't left me yet. So do that.
That would have been awkward.
And then the Johnny Lawrence chats that I think you've recorded a second one as well, haven't you?
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I'll put
there'll be a few. Yeah. It'd be good. Be talking about stuff like this. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. We've covered a bit of clinical educator recommending for newer staff entering their first clinical. I think there's loads already we've covered about if you're going into your first role as a clinical educator, look back at the previous hour or so of this, because there's tons of stuff in there that if you take from this and put that into your practice as an educator with a new student, I think you'll be one step ahead straight away. So I think that's quite a key one. The next question that I wanted to cover was about studying physiotherapy and going into sports physiotherapy and looking at a master's. What masters should they
I think they were studying physio, and then they wanted to get into sport. I think I mentioned a little bit about this already in a way. Now, I didn't go into professional sport. I treat professional sports in my clinic, but I don't, and elite athletes, but I don't actually, I've never worked in that kind of like with a team or anything. So, I'm coming from that side, just on that caveat, really.
Yeah.
But I think listening to and other people, so hold your horses, okay, for a second. So start, you haven't even finished your physio degree, so decide on a master's, as I said earlier on. Just be wary of what you're going to get yourself into. You know what I mean? It's a big commitment. When it comes to which one to do, I did sports and exercise medicine at Exeter, which actually doesn't happen anymore because the tutors who did the medicine side of things couldn't carry on anymore because of work commitments, and one retired actually. So they didn't carry on the medicine. They still did the sports and exercise science, but not medicine. And if you were a therapist, I wouldn't probably do that because there's not much clinical in the other side of things. There's biomechanics, which is brilliant, but the other stuff is stats, and then probably like cardio, physiology stuff, which again is great. But if you're looking to get like therapy and into sport, you're probably best off doing a sports medicine degree, master's, which I know there's a really good one in London, in where I used to work, or nearby, which is Queen Mary, and there's one in Bath and something else. So there is some sports medicine ones, which are again more clinical. There is, I know, physio ones, which I've never done them. So again, I don't like to comment on things I haven't done. But I think when it comes to the sports side of things, sports medicine, from what I've heard from people, would be better potentially for sport for obvious reasons. And then you've got potentially the strength and conditioning side of masters as well. But again, you don't get the clinical stuff in there. And that's really what you are. You're a physio. So, I know Ben Ashworth, who's at the Arsenal physio and does the courses and stuff. I think he's done 2 MSCs, and one now is in strength and conditioning. So like it's, but you've got to know where you are, before you start going into that specific focus. There's other things you could do before getting into that. I would be, the masters is the cream, and there's lots to do in the 5 years before. And I think getting into sport, the points I wanted to make for this person was really, be careful you don't turn into a glorified masseuse and taper. If you're into, there's just like your local teams or even academies and stuff, that's what you can turn into. If you're not getting good CPD, you're just rocking up and taping some arrogant 14-year-old. Just ask yourself what you're doing there, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you get stuck in there and thinking, right, oh, you know, I'm working here in this professional club and everything, but I'm thinking you're not learning, and that's not that, you know. So just ask yourself that. Reach out to the in the areas in the sports that you're interested in. But when you reach out to anyone, and especially if they're fairly big time, or if they're kind of, you know, big in the game, you've got to respect the fact that they're being asked every week, you know, mentorship, can I sit in with you? Can I do that? I go, they don't have the time. And also you're going to eat into the time. I get loads of emails saying, oh, can I sit in your clinic? I'm like going, I get people who are paying me a lot of money to sit in here. And then you want to sit in with that in their time and my time. And then I have to teach you. And you've not offered anything to me. Now that sounds really selfish, but I'm afraid it's going to not, you know, I'm not going to go, I don't even know you. Like, James, at least you've got some chance. But like, even still, I'm like going, wait a minute, I'm going to have to really restructure my whole day around. This is a lot of effort here. And you're just saying, oh, would you please be one? And I don't know you. It's an email. So in your email, be concise and specific and say, and I would even go as far as, if I really wanted, I'd say, look, I'm happy to pay for a mentorship. Because mentorship is actually a place where really, because then that will make me kind of go, this person's fucking serious here. I might have a chat with them. Yeah. I mightn't have the time. I still mightn't have time. It's not about money. It's about actually commitment. Again, the course. Have you paid for the course? Yeah. Where is your mind at? You know, not just can you give me a free mentorship thing so I can become brilliant. It's kind of like, no, you're not. It's like that band 5. You're not asking the right question. They're not putting themselves in my position and empathizing. So straight away I think, well, you're not even bothered to realize what you're asking me here. Yeah. So even offering that, and then even if they still say no, they're more likely to go, you know what, fair play, they've asked it, I'm really sorry, but I'll tell you what, try this. Yeah. Get something out of the email instead of emails I send back is, I'm sorry, I don't take on mentorships, because that's it. I don't have any more time. You've not ticked anything that I can help you with, and that's it. And you haven't showed me any commitment. Show them commitment in that way. Now, it doesn't always have to be financial, but it needs to be something that you're making that person's life easier. I'm just being totally honest here. That's what you need to do with, especially people who you're going to be aiming at. And even if they give you an email or a link or something like, or give me a call here, or let me know in a few months, get something out of them and then work on that. So don't give up. It's the Jay-Z thing. I think he was like 100 record companies before he got his label. He just kept going and going and going and going. And you've got to be persistent. You've got to be careful of the old, you know, all right, no one wants me, I don't like that. Yeah, of course they won't. You've either not answered, you've got to think, well, I've not asked the right questions, or I've not done the right thing. And if there is, and then be on the lookout. And I think that's my biggest thing. It's just like, you know, how do I get into sport? Is like going, you know, ask yourself some serious questions and get after it if you really, and if you're like, no, I don't want to do that, like, well, you probably don't really want it. And then down the line when it's tough. And the last thing before, because I'm ranting, is the EIS offer programs as well. I think, you know, you can contacting them and seeing if they can get on those programs. Like Ian Horsley and loads of those guys. You can always kind of maybe contact them on Twitter. Just say, look, how do I get in the EIS, or what do I need? Go on their website, you know, go to the obvious sports stuff and see where, and maybe even ring up and just say, can I speak to Physio just for a second? You know, how did you do it? What's it like? You know, people can, like, a phone call is not the hardest stuff. Get something out of it anyway. Yeah,
definitely. Fab. So moving on to the last couple of questions we've got here, which are on specifically on exercise, more about the prescription and stuff like that. One person's asked about current best practice and evidence base for loading as a treatment for proximal hamstring tendinopathies.
Cool.
So nice and specific.
Yeah. Your last guest would have something to say about this for sure. So I direct them straight to Tom's great paper, 2016, who he did with Peter Maliares, who, Peter, I'll talk about Peter in a second just briefly because he's an absolute sound man. Craig Purdom and Mike Ryman. So really like 4 guys who have no idea about tendons at all. So it's a great paper, and they summarize what our current practice is. Now, I don't think there's anything else majorly changed. Like tendons always a little bit changing a little bit, but that if you really want to learn a lot more than what I'm going to say, because I'm going to be brief here, is the summaries in there. He's done a podcast on it, I think Tom has as well. So like there's loads of stuff on it. I think first and foremost, what, you know, without going into too many specifics, is the theory based on it is it's a compressive tendinopathy, you know, or insertional compressive order. So somewhere also potentially from the external side of things would be load. So some sort of hip flexion increase in load, usually like things like running uphill, or if there's repeated hip flexion. So that's one of the mechanisms. There's several, but that's one, for example. I'm just going to try and keep this brief. The internal stuff, there's systemic drivers as well. So the less like athletic people, or the diabetes, the high lipid levels, the hormonal changes, these are all the things that, and again, they do a really good job in that paper. I'm not going to talk about all the things in there, but there's quite a number of other systemic drivers. It's not just athletes who get proximal hamstring tendinopathies. So based on the compressive nature of it and the theory around that at the moment, you got to get your differential diagnosis right as well. And they mention all the different ones in there as well. So that's why it's really good. So making sure you do rule out other things. I think that's the other thing about this, is you can't really tell the difference sometimes between a tendinopathy and a tear. So you could have a tear, but again, you manage it in a similar way until it's not responding. I like James Moore, you thicken or fail. So it works with what you think. You put in a program that you think should change something, or you should have some change. And I think all physios should have some idea of that in their head when they plan a program. And if it's not happening and it's just not making sense, then you know, make sure that the differential is and your diagnosis is correct. I think it depends on what stage they're in. So what stage of, are they in a really flared up reactive, and that will come from the history and the pain they present. So if that's what you're happy with, if they're in a really reactive stage, you want to try and calm it down like anything. I think removing compression is a good, so a lot of people, I've had a couple of dancers as well, and they're really obsessed with flexibility. So just to go to add more than just maybe the paper, referring to the paper, is stretching is a weird one for people. They really sometimes feel, because they feel it's tight, they stretch it more. And if they're a yoga head or I've had a few dancers with it, they just go right into pigeons and they're trying to stretch it away. And until I show them like their pop angles are absolutely amazing and they've got no flexibility issues, they're still going, oh, but I feel tight. So the feeling of tightness is a really tricky one so that would be a nugget of, in your subjective and objective, to kind of go, look, it's not tightness, it's the experience of tightness and its likelihood because of this. So that's one little thing. So removing of compression. So those things that the problem with proximal things, you sit, it's compressing it. So sometimes cushions, sometimes lying if you can, getting up regularly, getting away that compression as much as possible and not stretching it, and avoiding hip flexion movements as much in the early stages. So it's that kind of avoidance type strategy to start with. Then moving into, from an exercise point of view in those stages, there's some stuff, and again, the beauty about all physio stuff and treatment is the evidence isn't great. There's some, but it's not really very clear. So you can kind of be, and it's nice in some ways because you don't have to be so prescriptive. You can be a little bit like, oh, what stage are they at? I think one of the big things in tendinopathy, and I've done my master's thesis on tendinopathy, so I've read a little bit about it. So is that pain rule in the Cybernacle paper about 0 to 3 and the 24-hour response. Load is a huge factor a lot of the time. I know systemic factors are big as well, but load is usually a big factor in how much they've loaded, too much too quickly kind of idea. So getting that pain rule in and the pain 24-hour response and how it's responded to what you've given them or what they've done is really key. And that's something I use not only for tendons as well. I use that as, you know, as generally when judging how things have responded to what I've given somebody. So that's that 3, and I describe it as a niggle that you can tolerate. You know, because people go, what's a 3 out of 10? And I'm like, well, it's something that if you wanted to run, you could run, but you can feel it, but it's not stopping you, and you're comfortable to do that. A 4, 5, or 6 is it's saying no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to continue. It's more than that. And then usually the 7 to 10 is, you know, you want someone to chop your leg off, you know, or it's that painful, you know, you're at that level. And with tendons, you're usually between the first 2 sections, you know, that's kind of where. So it's quite nice. Once people have an idea of what pain is and how much is okay, and what it kind of again drops their thread of it. Okay, that's fine. So this is when, you know, pain during exercise is absolutely part of rehab. Isometrics are useful in that stage as well, but I love tension. This is where I bring in tension quite a lot. So coaching tension. and developing that tension in a non-compressive position, so non-hip flexion positions. There's loads of exercises you can do. I'm not going to go into all these, but and in that paper actually he even shows some stuff. So there's loads of things you can go there. So you can move through if you're into that, you can go from the isometrics to the isotonics, with the less hip flexion being the caveat there, moving towards more hip flexion as they tolerate it, as they tolerate more load with a progressive program, and then more into then really the stretch shortening cycle in the tendon, which is what it does. So it's that really rapid power movements and things. So I like most tendons, that's how I would work it, but particularly in proximal hamstring with the compressive side of things, I go through that. Everyone will react different to tendons, and so you just got to be knowing your stages, knowing your pain response, and don't be afraid to load, because if they're trying to get back to sport, then make sure you are doing your power. That's the one thing that a lot of physios leave out, is the power stuff. And tendons are springs, so if you're leaving out the shock stuff and you do all the nice strength and slow stuff, they're not, that's one big thing that Purdom and Jill Cook, and if you hear any of the other tendon heads, they always really, make sure you train a tendon like it should be. That's one thing we let. And then what happens is people go back, I think I'll feel fine. And as soon as they go back to the hills, or as soon as they go back to the speed work, it starts to flare again. And then they think you're rubbish, which they'll never. And if you're in private practice, they won't come back to you, and they won't tell all their friends, which is the marketing strategy. So I think that's it. I keep it quiet now. I could go on.
I think
the paper is really good, and Tom's done a podcast. And Peter Malieres, though, I did his course, and he actually moved into Royal London after I left, which was gutting really, because he would have been brilliant. But I remember him when I did my masters, and this ties in with the sports thing I was mentioning earlier on. It's like I was saying, Peter, I'm doing my master's thesis on tendinopathy. I've been on your course, it was very short. I said, look, can you help me out with just maybe some direct, I can't remember what I asked him for. I think it would have just been around research or something like that. Just something like that. But it was a very specific question. But like, I'd been on his course. I'd worked in the place he worked. I knew where he'd been. I respected him. And I don't know if this helped or not. I'm not sure. But he sent me back a full transcription of his course, audio, which I'd been on. But it was like that, and then just a whole bunch of other stuff, and I was like, "Oh, this guy's the soundest man I've ever met." Like, just he did not need to do that. And I don't know whether it was just because he remembered or what I said. You just don't know until someone does something. Anyway, you just always got to be sound. My mantra is be sound, not a dickhead. You know what I mean? And if you're sound to people, you never know what will happen. And Pete, when you ever meet him, he's just a sound guy. Like, he's really good from that point of view. Massively big time in Peter Malieres there, but he's genuinely a sound man.
It's good, and it is give and take, isn't it? And it does go back to what you talked about, the sports thing. There is, going in with the intention of just taking something from someone or an organisation is invariably not going to get you as far as if you're prepared to give something as well, whether that just be your time or whatever. But yeah, it's kind of just links back to something you just said there as well. But I think that covers the hamstring loading. The only thing I'll add on that a little bit, the tendons, when you're treating tendons in terms of allowing that small amount of recovery if you're loading tendons.
Okay. So how do you mean?
So if you're prescribing tendon loading, so if you whatever regime is, how do you deal with the notion of having a day in between of recovery for collagen synthesis and stuff like that? It's just stuff that I've kind of come across. Sorry, that's a good question. Yeah. So again, it depends on the patient's time. So like I said to you, if they can't, my rehab program might sound perfect, right? And this is all what the research is telling me, and I think I need to do it 4 times a week. And this is how the program will look. And this is when another person people should follow is John Kiley. He's a strength and conditioning coach, or he's a coach, athletic coach, top drawer, professional athletes. Been on loads of podcasts talking about periodization, really interesting views on that, which I really love. And he always comes back to the relationship is more important than periodization. So again, what the individual athletes on day-to-day basis is, you can't plan 6 weeks in advance. Things are going to change. It's going to be hard. So I think, again, when it comes to our patients, some of them might be athletes, some of them might be weekend warriors, and you need to establish, actually, do they have 2 sessions a week? Or actually, no, I can fit 4 sessions in. So that's first and foremost. And now, if it is in an ideal situation, which is kind of probably maybe what you're asking me, is I would generally like to have that 24-hour
gap. So you would do to nearly 36 hours. So I would, and it's the same with running as well when I do return to running, rightly or wrongly. But how I've interpreted the information is that if you're going to, especially in the early stages when you don't know, is that run Monday or do the exercise on Monday, and Tuesday, let's see this response. Yeah. And let's wait for that collagen synthesis and see if that is important. And then on Wednesday, then we go again. So day on, day off is a very common thing I use. Yeah. I mean, well, we've got to also, everyone's different as well. Some people can tolerate more, and collagen synthesis stuff is great and everything, but again, it can be very individual. Sometimes you can push people hard a lot, but it's how you're measuring their performance and how you're looking at other factors as well that allow you to think, well, actually now I need to back off. Yeah. And that's a whole different chat. But that comes from measuring and assessing and knowing the individual. And knowing the individual, again, comes back to relationship and communication, the number one tip for MSK, really.
Yeah, definitely. It always comes back in full cycle. The next one.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it to a name check to Catherine Barnes, because she was. I did a little competition just to whoever guessed who the guest was going to be first got the.
Oh, Catherine is the best. I love Catherine. She's the only person who knows me on the internet. I was crying inside when everyone was guessing those other people. Oh God, I wish it was them.
So you've already covered the question, I think, though, to be honest, because this was about the exercise prescription with pain.
I think I did cover it in that setting. So I used the 24-hour pain rule. You've got to get your diagnosis right. The first things first is I always say exercise prescription starts from the minute you pick up the notes, from their age to how your body language reacts to the notes, to what the GP says. I've read some horrendous notes going, oh my God, this patient's going to be a nightmare. And my body language will definitely translate that, and gone in and found out this person's just had a really shitty year. And I've just turned into, put the notes down. I just got to listen to this. This guy, this has been, no wonder they're like this, So I think exercise prescription starts from that, and reading all into that subjective. So again, coming back to really listening in there to know, because that'll help with diagnosis. It will exclude any of the sinister stuff and the stuff that you should be excluding when it comes to pain. You're not dealing with an acute problem. You're not dealing with an inflammatory problem. You're not dealing with sinister. You're getting that out of the way. So when you're just dealing with mechanical pain or pain that comes on when they move certain tissues, then it's all a little bit about and I think you could actually affect that some way, placebo-wise, by being sound and listening in the first place, because they trust you to move that thing then. Because you're going to ask them, can you squat? And they're like, oh, okay, well, this guy's listened to me, but potentially now I kind of trust them a little bit. It's hard to prove that, but I see it in practice. I'm always a bit like, they're going, I wouldn't have done this last week. I wouldn't have done this yesterday. You wouldn't have got me doing this week. You know what I mean? They start saying stuff like that, but they didn't have any qualms of doing it, or I put them in it. So it starts there. And then when it comes to the pain, it's always a dialogue. It's like going, can you tolerate that? And a lot of people kind of go, oh yeah. And then they're like going, yeah, no, I can tolerate that. Yeah. Or it's kind of like, no, I really can't. Okay. And then I adjust it. And then you just keep going. Then is this actually, I have to adjust it so much, it's not going to be valuable. So I'll move somewhere else. And is that then told me something about them? And do we need to have a discussion about it? So it's organic. And this is why when you ask therapists about what they do, they often go, well, it depends on kind of the situation, because you're constantly working out what they've said, interpreted it, and then kind of going, actually, no, you know what, we need to move, because that's now flagged something from your subjective. And that's so difficult from a new grad. Yeah. That's why if you open private practice for yourself or go into sport, that reasoning is not there. You've nothing to draw on. It's really, really hard. Mm. And when you ask an experienced physio, sometimes it's a bit like, I don't know where that comes from. I can't explain how I connected that with that. I've just been doing it for so long. And they know that master chess players, they have these chunking abilities to put things, they've seen the pattern before so many times. Yeah, that's how they know the moves. Pattern recognition, and I think it's called chunking as well. So you're, as an experienced physio, you've seen the questions, you've heard it, you're able to digest it way quicker than your counterparts who are less experienced. They may be really good and they might go on to be brilliant, but they just don't have that capability. Yeah. But what I mean was, when you're asking about pain, you're drawing on a lot of that other stuff. But the first thing is first, get it out that it's not serious. And once after that, you're coaching them through it. You're kind of like, oh, this is okay, maybe. This is all right. There's nothing I'm often saying, there's nothing here is worrying me here. I can't see why we need to do this or that. And these are the reasons why. I had a guy this morning, we were talking about it. This is like, and I'm talking about sensitization in tissue rather than he started with, I don't know if I've damaged it. I'm like going, we've done nothing except for do the same thing you were doing by about 20% more. You know, you got shoulder pain from bouldering a bit more intensely. And it's a bit like, well, it's hardly a damaged tissue. It's most likely to look at it from a sensitized or you've done too much. And then we need to find that balance again. You know what I mean? So pain it's a big one. And I think exercise and pain, it's definitely something you be careful of. Because again, lifting heavy weights as well, it's uncomfortable. Jeez, I do deadlifts out there. I'm like, oh my God, that was uncomfortable.
Yep.
But that's different. You know what I mean? And if I've never done it before, I'm going to label it different. I'm going to think, oh, this is really bad for me. And it's the physio and the coaches. That's where a good physio comes in. They'll know when it's okay to go through that or not okay based on everything they've assessed. That's why you assess them in the first place, I suppose. Yeah.
And then deem it okay and then give that reassurance to take them through it. Yeah.
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 And it's scary at the start because you don't have anything to draw on. So you're going to be nervous around that. So if she's nervous about that, like for good, it's all right to be like that. Just, get yourself mentored. That's why you have, you go in and get people and you ask questions about what you think of. I don't know whether to push them. And that's what a lot of my band fives, they'll go, it's just, they didn't push them hard enough. And I'll just say, they just push them hard. Just do that. I'll come in and do the thing. And I'm like, everything is what you're doing is great. You just need to do a bit harder or make them, work hard. Do it for longer, actually, is a lot of the time. Just like, it's good. See ya. And then they go, oh, and it's a confidence thing. And then they go, right, well, now they pattern recognition. So if they see that 15 times, it's more likely to be the next time they're going to see it, Yeah,
because they're getting that experience as well.
Mm-hmm. You can't rush it. You just need to have a good learning. You can't rush experience. It just has to happen. But you can definitely be good at how you manage your experience and putting yourself in uncomfortable situations so you get more experience quicker. And then you start seeing it. You get some people who are just real quick learners. Like you sit in your class at school and, Matt is brilliant at French and I'm crap at it. Where's that come from? He just might be the way it is. I'm not going to go, but I'm like the Gary Neville there. Gary Neville was not a talented footballer, but he worked real hard and he became one of the best right backs in the country, both for England and Man United. But he's a grafter. He's a pure grafter. He ain't Ronaldo. He's not even your man Januzaj, who played for Man United later, real skillful, but actually didn't fulfill potential. No hard work, maybe no effort or whatever. Yeah. You've got to always put that. You mightn't be the best physio in the first 5 years. I thought I was below average, and I don't think I'm brilliant either now. But it's good to you're just always just trying to push that next level. And I see these guys like Tom and everyone else online. And I'm going, that's good, right? They push me on. I'm seeing that as right. I need to do a bit more there, or I'd love to be doing that as well. And if you've got that mindset, you'll be grand. Yeah,
and it's driving yourself forward. Yeah, and being dragged forward as well.
Small bits. Yeah.
Cool. So to finish off, we've got the normal questions that I ask every single guest. So they start with the first one. So it's a research paper that's potentially a bit old, but remains important to you in your practice that you could recommend we go and read.
Yeah, think about that one. It comes back to, it was a paper by a guy called Ben O'Nig in 2001. And Ben O'Nig is a big name in biomechanics, Canadian. I think I don't know what university in Canada now, but like since the 70s maybe, or 80s, definitely the 80s anyway, research into biomechanics and orthotics and stuff like that. And part of my master's research was in tendinopathy and stuff, and also I had to do biomechanics. And the paper was the role of impact forces in pronation, a new paradigm. So it was like a review, right, of kinematics and kinetics and why orthotics work and don't work, and why shoes work and don't work. Because that's why you see the research, you can see like it changes pain, but it doesn't change kinematics and kinetics. So what the hell? We haven't changed any forces or angles, but the pain's different. Why? And then we see research that changes forces and angles, and the pain is still there. Yeah. So now you're like, well, wait a minute. So you've got two kind of contradictions. And then you've got the other ways as well. So you've got ones that do change kinetics and kinematics and change the pain. So you're like, oh yeah, brilliant. So if you look at certain research, you could be like, yes, orthotics are brilliant. But they're not crap either because they work. just a bit like other placebo effects and things like that. And it's not a placebo necessarily. There are obviously placebo effects with lots of things we do. But when it comes to that paper, what he was saying is that the central nervous, and this is somebody who's reflected on a long time looking at biomechanics, and said that the central nervous picks the preferred movement pattern and then alters the muscle activity. And if orthotics or shoes support that new movement pattern or muscle activity, then it helps. But only if it supports what the central nervous system decides or has that preferred. So it's very much linked again with pain science nearly in a way. So if your brain, so I think it's like when people get benefits from doing like barefoot running or changing running style, they go, oh wow, that feels so much better and things. It's like, and then everyone should do it. And we know that doesn't work. So it's kind of like, it was just somebody reflecting. It's a great paper. And for biomechanics as well, it's not, read biomechanics papers. I'm sorry, I'm not a great reader anyway, so add in angles and all that, and just like, it's heavy going. But this paper is a nice one. It's not long. And I just thought it was when somebody stood up who's going to put loads of effort and time and life into stuff and kind of go, wait a minute, I think we're looking at it the wrong way here. There's something going on, but it's not what we think, or there's something a bit more here. And it made me think of Greg Lehman as well, who's I've been on his course and stuff like that. And the same thing, he kind of starts his course and he was like going, biomechanics, how much has that told us over 30 years? And he's like, oh, not an awful lot, It's not, it's been absolutely essential, but there's a lot of things it hasn't, and it's put us down rabbit holes that have not really, have actually confused us more than anything at times, or it's been misinterpreted or misunderstood. So I like that paper for that reason. It's just, it keeps you humble as well when it comes to, don't be afraid to, like, I've said some stuff in the past about strength training that I'm like now going, oh, good luck. Why did I say that? I used to I wasn't a big, you go through periods of listening to different people. And that's the other thing. I think I was talking about being the Bruce Lee effect, which is not having a style of physio. Because he used to say, if you have a style of martial art, you're a slave to that style and you have to stay within that style, which makes you unflexible. So he talks about bamboo being strong and flexible in the wind. If you're too rigid, you would break. So if you have to go by, I am a the physio, or I've read all that stuff about those and I do this stuff, you're going to get caught out because your cognitive dissonance will keep you in that and keep you staying there. So the Bruce Lee effect, and I used to call Greg Lehman Bruce Lee. Well, I did say to him, you're the Bruce Lee physio, because he also does gymnastics and backflips. But it was the fact that he absolutely drives himself mental with finding problems in his own bias, which is, you can hear him talking, he gets really frustrated with himself, which I think is great. It's good. And it's why he's popular, because he's a smart guy, and he's competing with his own, which is really difficult to do. And it ties in with Elon Musk's advice, which is seek out critical feedback. Yeah. It's the number one thing why successful people get successful is, find that, yes, men are never, yes, women, it's never going to be, it's never going to help. And I think he does that really well. So I'm giving him another name drop there on that one, because he's really good. So if you don't know about him, you should really check his stuff out. But that's that one.
That's a good one. No, that's good. And that's linking in. There's loads of common themes with this, because doing these interviews for students, I think we're going to come out with the end of this with just a ton of streams that have run through everything. And that is, again, that bias thing. Again, if you can be aware of it and be accepting and changing, and that flexibility, you're onto a winner. Really are. So yeah, good paper. So then flipping that, then a current paper, the most recent paper that you've read that's changed your practice. Yeah,
it's recent. It's old, but it's not. I've only read it recently in the last month, and it comes from where I'm heading towards getting better at language of coaching. So I heard a guy called Nick Winkelman. He's a strength coach. He works in Ireland, but he's American. He's writing a book called The Language of Coaching. It's coming out soon. Now, I haven't read it, obviously, but I just heard him talk to guys in the States called Eric Cressy, and he's been on a few podcasts, and I've started following and listening to his theories. And it's a research-based book. And then I just listened to a few of the authors he was talking about, particularly a woman in Nevada, University of Nevada, called Dr. Wolf. I can't remember her first name, but she's called Wolf, W-U-L-F. About attentional focus and about cueing and internal and external cueing and what's better or what. And now it always comes back to, again, when you listen to him he can get misinterpreted. He says that external cueing is better than internal cueing, and that's not what I got from him anyway. He seems to say that's not what I mean. And there's different. Everyone has different. Learns differently again. But Wolf's research looked at, and I read it was 2013, was a review on external internal cueing. Now, external cueing being, like I would say something like spread the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So, or get the bar up high, or keep the bar high, or smash your knee through that windscreen in front of you. Something kind of, or focusing not on the internal, like put your arm in this position, or keep your knees turned out, or bend at your hips, or keep your back straight. Mm-hmm. That's an internal cue. Okay, or if you're swinging a club, keep the swing, and this is the other thing. So keep the club light, or whatever you want to say. The key thing from the research is it has to be in their language. So you've got to ask. So if you cue somebody, they need to be, because he has a thing saying, like, you describe it, so you tell them what you're going to do. Yep. You demo it without talking, and that's called dual coding in coaching. Yeah, so you get that. You don't speak during that. You just demo, because if you do two, then you may lose it. And then his one then is you cue it then. So whatever the cue is, and the cue needs to be emotional, memorable, and very kind of visual for the person, rather than keep your knee at a 90-degree angle.
Yes, okay.
That comes in the description, and then it's debrief it, which is I really like this, because I was kind of going, I had a similar kind of thing, and this guy's put it into a kind of nearly like a process, which is really nice. And then you go, you know what I mean by spreading the floor, or do you know what I mean by that? What does that mean to you? And a lot of people go, I don't know. And I'm like, well, this is what I'm getting at. And then they'll say, oh, you mean like ripping a piece of paper between my feet? Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
that's where they rip the paper, or whatever, but it has to go into their language. But her research in 2013 looked at, I think, if I'm hopefully, it was looking at basically, I think they were kicking a ball. I can't remember if it was American football or a soccer ball, but basically he was kicking a ball, and they were broken into two groups. One group got internal cueing, internal, and one group got external cueing. So that there was two wings of this. The ones who did the external cueing did better, significantly better on executing the task. So that's where then it kind of blew up, as external cues are better, but not necessarily, and it's very situational. But it's just interesting to start thinking about what you're saying to your patients, and again, what they're actually understanding, and then them using their language, just like in subjective. And the other thing was that it was the amount of times you coach. I think I might have talked about this. Actually, I've talked about this on my next thing with Johnny Lawrence, the powerlifting coach. Actually, we go through this. But it was they also broke it down into that group that got the internal and external cues. Part of those got the cues 100% of the time, so every rep. Yeah. So let's say they said, aim for that, try and loop the ball into the circle, or whatever whatever the external cue was, and they got that every time they did it. And then the other part of the group were given it 30% of the time, and the group who got it 30% of the time did better. Okay. And that was repeated in a few sports. So she's repeated this, and there's a few other things. Now, I haven't read around it enough yet to be like absolutely, this is what I'm just really excited about this, because it's developing my coaching now, and really starting to understand that, like I did with subjective assessment about diagnosis. I'm now going to go, can I be a better executor of, because again, exercise compliance, it's likely that they need little exercise rather than lots. Yep. So how do I make the basics, the exercise, so tension would be one thing, but also how am I cueing them so that they get the most out of those one or two exercises I've given? They're getting absolutely everything, and the language is useful, and they're walking away with that visual, and they're more likely to remember it. According to this guy in this research, I'm really excited to read the book, but that Wolf paper in 2013, if anyone's interested in internal and external cueing, it's free, I think. I can't remember where I got it, but it's online anyway. You can dig it out.
Oh, we'll put a link down there as well. Beauty of being a student is you've got access to everything. So,
well, and then I thought, so is that really kind of like students would be like, oh, well, okay, really, okay, I'm not. Is this a bit? The definitely the paper you should read is the Lynn 2019 11 recommendations for MSK medicine. Do you guys know that?
I've heard of that one. Yeah.
It's like like that should nearly be like a kind of, it's a seminal paper of kind of gathering all the information. What should we do? And they do 11 recommendations based on the evidence we have. And like at top of the list is kind of like, develop a patient-centered approach, communication. That's number one. That's key. Yeah. And then rule out sinister stuff. And it goes through the priorities over. And so that's a really nice paper to read. And I think physio students would learn a lot from that, because then it's really a nice little summary paper, So I think that would be one. That's Lynn et al. 2013. Peter Sullivan is involved in that as well.
See, that did the rounds on Twitter, certainly. And yeah,
BGSM, so it's free.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, we'll put a link to all of those. Bonus, he gave us more than two. Fantastic.
The student one.
Like it. Right, let's throw in the curveball. I didn't tell you I was going to ask this one. So if you were deserted on an island, and you had to choose one piece of equipment, what would you have with you?
Is this? Can I ask you? Like, what do you mean? Anything at all in the world?
When I wrote this question, I thought I'm going to leave it to see what his interpretation of equipment is. Because I was thinking, are you going to go straight to strength stuff, or are you going to go to
play something to play music? I can always use my body. Cool. I don't need equipment to train.
I like it.
I'll have to have music. Oh yeah, music number one. So it's a decent boombox.
Nice. Okay. Good.
I'm wearing a drum code techno label. I'd have to have that.
We'll put a link for that down in the description. Okay.
Yeah, if you want to listen to some decent techno, check out drum code. I was going to say that, like Tom the running physio, Adam Meekins the sports physio. I should have really been the techno physio, or that would have been, and then I could have been just a physio DJ, which would have been, for all their aches and pains they get, and I could have traveled around doing that. I missed the trick on Twitter there. Dark rooms and stuff, yeah. Dark rooms, strobe lights, and 130 BPMs. Lovely. I love it.
Okay, moving on.
Yeah.
I never thought we'd actually go past the length of time my Tom Goom interview was, but we have well and truly smashed it out the park. If physiotherapy wasn't an option, what career would you have liked to have had?
This just answered the question. I got Dex when I was about 14, and I was never very good. Didn't put the time in. But I'd love to have been a DJ. I absolutely love clubs. I love all music. I'm a big, Stone Roses and indie fan as well. But being in a dirty black club, dancing around with people is great crack, and I'd love to have DJed. Yeah, would have done that.
Fantastic. Like it. Okay, cool. And then finally, we've got recommend us something. So it can be absolutely anything. A book, experience, course, film, a life hack. So Tom gave us the rubber glove and a jar of peanut butter. What have you got for us?
I missed that one.
Oh, no.
I missed the peanut butter glove thing.
Oh, what you mean?
That's really... I just didn't hear that bit. I don't think I listened to that bit. Must have cut him off by then. The life hack. Oh yeah, right. Yeah. Good. I'm gonna go a bit serious on this in some ways. It ties in with kind of what I've learned from reading about successful people in all types, sport or business or whatever they do. They always do three things, and it ties into my 3 circles as well, which sounds a bit cheesy, but they do 3 things that are the most. It's the must-do list. It's not to-do lists are shite. They don't work. They pick 3 things that needs to be done in that day, and they do them as soon as possible, and nothing else gets in the way. So if you're on Twitter and if you're on Twitter, fine. But if it's not getting what you planned the night before to get done, now that could be 3 work things. That could be 3 if work is busy at the time, and you need to make sure that will lead then to the next day, and you don't stop until those 3 things are done. And if you're going, now I'm doing this, but wait a minute, I'm not doing the thing I should do. Leave that. You can get the problem with life is now you get distracted all the time. Yeah. And I had it yesterday. Sometimes I'm doing my slides and then something comes through my phone, and then next thing I'm 10 minutes on my phone, and nothing actually came out of that I couldn't have done when my kids were sleeping in bed. And that's wasted my 10 minutes, and I've lost my focus. So I caught myself, and I put the phone down and I go back. So 3 must-do things, and if you don't get them all done, they then flow into the next day, and if you do them, they're never the things you like. They're always uncomfortable. They're a pain in the ass. You don't want to do them. And they're the things you need to do. It's like when you go in the gym. If you're doing the things, you'll always do the things you like.
Yep.
Runners will always run because they like running. You know what I mean? So it's like going, so you've got to find out, and as I'll end on this, is that you've got to find out somebody's what they really excites them, what makes, it's never getting out of pain. It's something usually to do with sport or life, whatever. When you have that, do not leave the subjective assessment until you have it, and then design everything towards that. They're more likely to comply because they want that more than anything. So those three musts must lead to that want. And that doesn't, and as I said to you, it doesn't have to be any major. Maybe it's just like, make sure I'm around for 3 o'clock to do the interview with you. You know, it can be simple as that, but I need to be there. I need to be prepped. I need to have my computer charged, or whatever it might be. I need to have my bag ready for the gym. I need to have my gym ready so that the time is ready. I've eaten at the right time, so I'm not dying when I'm in the gym later on. Do you know what I mean? It's getting those 3 things that are leading to the next 3 things. Your goals and your success is more likely to go up if you do that, based on what I've read. So there's your life hack. Do that.
Okay.
It's hard. It's really hard.
So yeah, I'd recommend, certainly as students, is, you know, we're always experimenting with stuff like this, and I think so. Anyone who's watching this now, give that a go and give it a good solid go and see if it works for them. Because I think it sounds like it's back to what we talked about, focus, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, it's just kind of like, because you really want this thing, and that's what I say to people. It's like, if you really want it, you should have visual. You know, like I have it on my phone, I have pictures of what I want, I have it written down. Goal attainment goes up when you write things down. If you tell people, I have people I'm accountable for my goals. So I'll be like, and that's why I like the Adam Meakin stuff about the 100, a day stuff.
Yeah.
Because it made people be accountable. You know, I'm accountable to being online, but it turned out to be, no, it was a competition with myself, and it drives accountability when we tell. It's something like 76% more likely to achieve a goal if you are accountable to somebody. And that's really important. Like, that's, so if you've got something, you should always tell people your goals if you want them to, because on that Tuesday night when it's raining and you don't want to go out and train, or you don't want to go to 2 and you just don't feel quite right, and oh well, I'll have a glass of wine and I've had a really tough day and all that. So wait a minute, that's what you wanted. Get the phone out, look at the pictures, get the music on, get the smells of the deep heat or whatever makes you kind of think of that. And then that's more likely your brain is going to go, yeah, I want that, more than sitting on the couch drinking wine. That's not going to make you feel good. It's going to make you feel good right now, but not in 10, 20 minutes time, or tomorrow or whatever.
When you haven't done what you knew you wanted to do. Yeah.
That's why it's got to be clear and an easy place to find why you want to do it. And that's not always easy. And again, it comes back to that 5 years, your plan. What do you want to be in the future? Don't panic too much. Just have a vague, even if it's a bit foggy, it'll come clear if you work hard and keep pushing yourself into some uncomfortable positions, and just keep chipping away at that. Work on your communication. Bye. That's it.
Done. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
2 hours summarized right there.
Well, yeah. If you just come in at the end, that's it.
Still go back and watch and subscribe.
Oh, please do watch and subscribe and everything like that. Follow me. It's really interesting.
So, I mean, that leads me on to a thing. So if people want to find out more about you, God, that you hear that on every single podcast, don't you? But
come around my house. Break COVID-19. Come round.
What's your address?
Yeah, chuck that out. Yeah, come round. Mentorship schemes, all that crack. Yeah, I'm after 2 hours, I get it all. I'm a few things. My website, you probably put it on the thing. So it's it's www.procaresportsmedicine.com.
Yep.
That's with an S. McCauley Andrew, that's McCauley. Andrew, what the name is on there? McCauley Andrew on Twitter. I've got a YouTube, which I use a little bit of. Instagram, it's ProCare Sports. Facebook is the same, ProCare Sports Medicine. So I'm on there. I run a course in unraveling strength and conditioning for therapists, which is kind of how, based on psychology, human behavior, trying to improve compliance, as well as teaching people principles of S&C and how you can incorporate that into their exercise programs. And then I'm also actually going to be involved. There's a new thing coming up, actually, Health Development and Performance Network. It's a new network where we're going to be offering education, including mentorships, actually. So there's going to be an opportunity for continuous education, so you can work with some of the top people in the country. So I'm going to be involved in that. and there'll be webinars and a lot of education, but there'll be a kind of process of learning, a bit like what I've been saying about, rather than just kind of going on courses randomly. This is something that looks at long-term education, and actually you've got somebody to be accountable to. So if you're going to do the course and then you're going to have a mentor, you really need to then follow that up, and that mentor will then offer that support. And that's the accountability again. So that's coming to, that's involved with James Moore and a few others. So it's going to be, I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be big next year.
Great. Well, we'll put a link to that down in the description as well.
HDPN, I think it's the short is what the short is.
Fab. Okay. No, that sounds good. It links a lot of what you've been talking about as well through. So fantastic. I think we covered, pretty sure we covered everything. I'm sure we covered everything and more. And I think what I would, if we can, that probably, I'm sure at some point later on in the year, get you back on and maybe talk more around the strength and conditioning side of it. I know that I certainly would like to pick your brains on more of that from a therapist point of view, and how that can, how we can improve that in our practice, especially as new grads, because coming out of university, it's not something that's covered huge amounts by most universities. So that's something we might want to cover another point. But thank you very much for a lot of your time, Andrew. It's been a fascinating chat, and I know people are going to get loads out of this. And we look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Thanks a million, James. Yeah, it's been great crack. Thanks a million.
Cheers.
See ya.